I did a whole intro and it was not live. Hilarious. I mean, not a whole intro. I said, welcome everybody. That wasn't a whole intro, but that was weird. So now, welcome everybody to Simulation Talk 318. All the good people, Guru and Jessica are in the house, waiting for everybody else to come in. Let me open the stage. Here we go. On Discord, of course. So you guys can join. Beautiful. Stage is now officially open on Discord. You're welcome for this. What up, Bright Moth, Jessica, RNS Laser? How are you guys? Jules, how you doing, brother? Wendell, awesome. Good turnaround. Good turn up today. Not of my brain, but of you guys. So I appreciate that. Let me put our website here. CodeOfReality.com. Welcome to Simulation Talk 318. And here's our website. What is up? CodeOfReality.com. No, I'm not going to keep it up because this is crazy. Is it? Is it going to keep doing this? Hold on. Yep. I don't know why it does this sometimes. What up, Carson? Good to see you. Jessica is saying, funniest thing happened to me today. And for no one to get the humor in it. Well, maybe if you tell us, maybe we'll understand the humor in it. You never know. By the way, a quick message for Discord. As always, if you want to even potentially talk, feel free to raise your hand. I'm not going to make you otherwise. And the fact that you raised your hand, what up, Kate, does not mean that you have to talk. You can just stay silent in the background and you can always unmute and speak at any time. It's a nice privilege on Discord that I like because it gives us a good opportunity for potential interaction that is much more likely than a no interaction. So there we go. If you raise your hand, I'll bring you up, and you don't have to speak. Isn't that a deal? Clink-a-link, clink-a-link, clink-a-link. Big Al, Voyor. What the hell, yeah, Sans. What up, Kami Bet? I haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you with us. Who else is here? Here. Canona. Okay. Oh, that's why it's weird. Hold on. That's much more normal. Way too much light. It was. Rymoth is saying, you guys can't hear? Yeah, request to speak. Exactly. Of course you can, RNS Laser. You guys are welcome to speak about whatever you guys would like. I believe you want to talk about the double slit experiment, but whatever you guys want to raise. Again, you just have to request to speak. Do you guys, is there some complication here? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so basically, again, even if you guys don't want to talk, you can always raise your hand. I'll bring you on stage, and you can just stay silent until the moment that you feel you have something to say. That way, there's way more chances of people jumping in instead of overcoming the extra hurdle of raising your hand, me noticing, bringing you up, and all of that stuff. What up, Ravens West? Wow, good turn up today. Welcome to Simulation Talk 318. The channel talks all things simulation. On my Discord, let's see what you sent me. Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't see it for some reason. Okay. What did you send me? I don't see anything from you, RNS Laser. I see something from No, I did not get anything. I see your message now. I did not get anything. You want to send it again now? Oh, that was the message. Okay, it just says, oh, today's October 3rd. Okay. Direction, but there was one thing you said last night. Really was concerning. You said something along the lines of you enjoy and get excitement from having stage to tell people no, it's not what I said. I've made very clear that the thing that I enjoy is to elevate other people's moods, and that the interaction is the thing that brings that about. I emphasized very clearly that it was not the point to just have the attention. It's what do you do with the attention? You elevate others. That's the thing that I actually enjoy. Okay, so I'm glad we put that to rest. But you guys can bring up whatever you guys like, including topics like this. There's no problem. There's no off limits topics aside from boring ones. The only topics that are off limit are just boring ones that nobody cares about. But anything that is interesting, controversial, doesn't matter. We can talk about it. Disagreements are extremely welcome. They're juicy, they're fun, and if they're done correctly, they actually lead to the most progress. So everything is welcome. You guys are welcome to come on Discord, join Discord. You can find the links to which both in the live right now. Guru put it in the chat. You can also find it on YouTube on the main page and also on TikTok on in the link tree. Aaron, Giselle, Tommy, Pony. What up? Rotor Racing, Daniel Jerome. Okay. What is that? Oh, that's hilarious. That is really funny. Oh, it's a lot of messages. Let me read them. What up, Carson? Yeah, well, whomever gifted you a membership was probably Chris, is not with us here, but I will pass it along. High Tech is in the house. Global Optimaterit saying, happy to find you online. Happy you joined as well. Just saw a clip of your movie on Facebook, and I want to see the whole thing. Where can we see it? It's not ready. It'll be ready by the end of the year. And if you guys want to still donate to the post-production, we're already in post-production. You guys can do that by finding the trailer on my channel here on YouTube on Dango Thoughts. And the trailer's name is just The Discovery. And in the description, you can find the GoFundMe page. We're very much still receiving donations for the post-production, even though we're working on it full swing. And if you're a baller and you can actually donate over $1,000, which is quite a bit, but if you do that, you will automatically be added to the list of people who will see the movie together for the first time ever in history, all at the same time. I think it's pretty neat. Audio is great. Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Oh, yeah, I was telling Gemini about the theory of everything, and it was like, what about the electron-proton mass ratio? And bam, I hit it with the ratio. 12 to the power 3 plus 108 blew its mind. All right. Awesome. You blew the machine's mind. Audio. What up, Danny? Hey, have you ever heard of Matthias the Stefano? Yes, I've heard him. He remembers his past lives, even several lives on an electron or in other dimensions. He has explained dimensions and all sort of things. Yes, I know. If you guys haven't watched my conversation with Sean Kelly, I'll share it here. You guys should. It was a really good conversation. It was really nice. Sean Kelly's channel on Instagram is enormous. They have 12 million followers. On YouTube, he has a large channel, but for some reason, there's not a lot of traction on his thing. I don't know if it's because in the beginning he was trying to raise the amount of followers, and then he was screwed by people who sell you a service and they basically send you to click farms that really damages your channel. His traction on Instagram is very serious and very big. So, anyways, this channel is huge, and yet all of his videos, including mine, don't really get that many views. So first of all, the conversation was really fun. It was really great. I'm mentioning it for a reason. So first of all, it would be great if you guys give this conversation some love. So I posted a link right now on YouTube. Sean Kelly on YouTube, Danny Goldler. Look for that conversation. So in that conversation, I kind of mentioned something which touches upon um, Matthias. What I said in that conversation when Sean asked me about, what I think about all these like different levels of densities and all that stuff that is being discussed, including some of the stuff that Matthias is talking about. He didn't ask about him, but he definitely is belonging in that family of people making these claims. What I said is that I don't always know how to feel about that, because even though it's very clear to me that he's an outstanding person, very great energy. Like there's no doubt in my mind that I would love to hang out with him. He looks like a great person. But whenever people start making too specific of a claim about a thing that doesn't matter to the listener, I'm raising an eyebrow. And I'm very open about that. I would easily say it to him directly, and it's not like in any negative sense. It's just that when you start telling me that your guides from the fifth dimension versus your guides from the sixth dimension, I go like, why don't you just say your guides? When people do that, that weird little flex tells me that there's something that is not quite right. Does that mean necessarily that is like making the whole thing up? No. But how do you substantiate this? How is this different than any other claim? Aside from the fact that he blew, what's his name? Aubrey Marcus, right? So he blew his mind, right? Again, one more example of a person who seems awesome, even though I heard that he's controversial for some people. I don't get it. He seems to be super positive about like a super, person who's operating in a positive way. But yeah, I know, like I've seen the podcast with him. Very extravagant claims, but they're based on nothing but what he's telling you. And again, great vibe. But to me, it's empty. It's like all of these crazy claims about different dimensions and all the connections and all the things. I'm familiar with the ideas and the way that you structure it, but if it doesn't connect to something you can really, do something with, I have a hard time connecting with it. It's just my personal thing. So it's the all of the think about it this way. All of these extravagant ideas, if they play a role in making you more excited about life, awesome. But if you're asking me, do I think that that's what's going on? No, of course not. Like, of course not. Not that that's of course not what's going on. Of course not. Like I would not follow that as like a guide to what I think is actually reality. Considering the fact that like you can be shown so many different things, I'm shown a lot of things. This is something that I talk about sometimes, but a lot less about, because when people ask me, so I would talk about different beings and things like this. But I always add, I say, hey, like that's what it was shown to me, and that's the channel that I'm taking seriously, and that's the thing that guides my work. But I don't expect anyone to follow it unless they have their own personal direct experiences. The problem with these kind of claims is that when I am paying very close attention to what exists in that space, and people, serious people, like get different messages, sometimes conflicting messages, and they have a similar vibe. So who do you listen about this? That's why, and because it doesn't really make any difference whatsoever, like what it actually like about the way that you live your day to day. It's just where I stand on these topics is that unless you can show me that you're doing something with it, there's not much that that interests me there. That's my position on this. Within 0.08% accuracy, but I was sitting on that answer for a decade. Nice, Jessica. That's amazing. Oh, baby girl. You sure he will have an explanation about the code? Oh, I'm sure he'll have an explanation. Is that explanation correct? That I don't know. People that claim too much knowledge just on the basis of their word alone, I can't take them seriously, even if they're super nice. Again, Matthias looks like the nicest guy. The nicest guy. I'm just separating the person from the claims. That's all. The number for gravity is 9.8. The number for gravity on Earth is 9.8. That's not a universal constant, just so you know. It has to do with Earth's mass. The film is going to be in the end of the year, ready by the end of the year. Yeah, I know. My style is a little bit more, I guess it's a little drier from all that the alternative thought space. Sometimes to my detriment, sometimes to my benefit. I'm not sure, but that's how I am. For me, head done. Been waiting to brag. Cool. Well, again, Jessica, if everything you're doing is correct, that I'll be the first one to congratulate you for getting the Nobel Prize. That's all I can say. I would be super beyond ecstatic for you. Is the code attracted to or repelled by magnets? We tried so far. Sure, Carson. No, so far no success, but doesn't mean that we won't have any success. Just means maybe we didn't try the right idea. You found the number of protons, electron mass, starting with the number 9.8. Trying to share the theory of everything with y'all since I come to work on it. I see. Okay. What up, Carter? How you doing, brother? Project Veilbreak joined the room. Glad to have you with us. Let's see what we got. Oh, thank you so much for the likes. I really appreciate it. Awakened. Dobry dzień, dobry dzień. No questions so far on TikTok. Oh, let me see what's going on. Rymoth is saying, what's your favorite platform to engage with? Can be, for technical reasons, turnout, demographic, etc. Which one are you most pleased to see high turnout on? I think YouTube. But for very selfish reasons. I think YouTube simply because it's clear to me that YouTube is the most stable in terms of the what the trajectory, but it's also the longer game. So like, if you start getting traction on YouTube, that means you really like been there for a while, did that. There's no way you're gonna make YouTube work within a month. It just doesn't work. The algorithms don't work that way. So it just kind of, to me, it's a signifier of your level of work. So YouTube is probably the one that I enjoy turn up on the most. Because to share it, I put in science, but I have to patent my IP before I share the syllable part. Got it. Okay. I was wearing the Code of Reality shirt, and I got asked what was the code. So I explained what it was and sent them your YouTube link. Hopefully they will join us. Awesome. Thank you so much, Guru. I appreciate you. What up, Sean? I heard that you were presenting today. That is amazing, brother. Oh, wait. This is... I've been running your toe through a Grok modular. I have some feedback for you. Think I need to DL it a bit, but it's close to being ready for you. Awesome. Thank you, Carter. Thank you for taking the initiative, as always. So I want to encourage topics. It doesn't mean that you can't bring any other topics, but I want to encourage topics that are more on the personal level, like what it's like to be us humans having this experience. I want to hear more from you guys about not just, for example, people always give you trip reports and then they report the trip itself. But usually people put a lot less emphasis on how they felt, what it meant for them. Sometimes they do, but it's not just in trips, just in general. If there's anything you guys want to raise, if there's any, confusion about something that you guys want to maybe talk through, about a relationship with somebody else, with other people, just how you guys feel yourselves in the world. That entire genre of conversations, I think, I want to explore more in the next few lives. And again, like I always say, undoubtedly will, of course, towards more technical subjects, just because that's the majority of what we do here. So don't worry about that part. You will always find us. DAI. Just let AI run with it. But that holds me back. It doesn't want me to go into quantum because it doesn't fit the flow. The Euclidean art. What do you mean by you let AI run with it? Like, would you not like make sure that it doesn't drift into absurdity, Jessica? Which alien do I resonate most? Mostly Mantis only. I don't know, honestly. I never thought about that. Hold on, my hair is being insane. I never thought about that. It's a good question. You gave me a lot of platonic solids. I don't think it's exactly relevant to your theory of everything. So I need to do now work on it. Gets absurd. I trim it out until what's wrong and correct. Oh, okay, great. Feline, Arcturian. I don't know. I have to think about it. I never really put any thought into that. Have I explored the telepathy tapes? Yes, I've listened to them. What about them, Real? And thank you so much for joining and for the likes. I appreciate it. I will definitely think about it, Daniel. Good question. Agents Revolution. It's a good handle. Sounds like an interesting on profitable direction to explore, not just what one experienced, but how does it affect you day to day? Yes, sir. How you doing, brother? Good to see you. Good for you to join. I could hop on and chat about this seasons of life a bit, being something I'm currently transitioning through. Absolutely, brother. Come to Discord and come on stage. Just raise your hand and I'll bring you up. I'm assuming you're on Discord, right? My what up, TikTok Lopalis saying been off social media for a while. So sorry if you've talked about it already. What are your 3i Atlas thoughts? I have none. I am very neutral about this. If it comes and we discover it's something amazing, wonderful. Otherwise, I simply, it's not the domain that I usually pay attention to. Real spirituality. Thank you. Oh, here we are. What up, Sean? Are you? There we go.
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you for asking. How are you doing?
Good, good. Can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you perfect.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. So yeah, I mean, on the topic of human experiences, I mean, we're all in a good position to talk about them because we're all living them currently.
Yes, sir.
But as far as the seasons of life are concerned, I feel like that's probably an angle that I'm freshly reliving and remembering exactly how dramatic that the difference between those seasons can be. And I don't mean seasons by your dirty 30s and your your 50s and all that. I mean the cycles of life that we go through, the more dormant periods, the periods where everything just seems to be aligning perfectly and the synchronicities are happening and everything is just giving you all the times like you're on your path and then they just stop. And then you wonder that's the period I'm coming out of now, like the 3-year period where they just stopped and the passion got sucked out of my life and the direction and the next step was no longer obvious, and it was just this big long waiting game. And I feel like it's probably something that a lot of people can resonate with. Well, it's part of the human experience. And it's, you were talking about on yesterday's life, part of the hero's journey as well is that there's going to be those trials, and they're gonna test you.
Yeah.
And it's easy to lose faith. It's easy to forget just how beautiful and interwoven everything really is. And I as I'm talking about it, I just got this rush of, tingles down my spine because I really do feel super blessed and relieved that I'm out of that period and I feel the calling again and I feel a purpose and things are lining up and my energies are being put into something that I know is going to do something good for many, many people. And I needed it. I really, really needed it. So, again, thanks for putting all this together, and making your discovery known. Without it, I'm sure I'm not the only one that you're helping find meaning again. So thanks for that. And thanks for not giving up and just pushing through and not letting the scientific establishment, dissuade you from rattling some cages, because that's what's going to have to happen.
Yeah.
To get the attention that it deserves.
I appreciate the kind. I appreciate
of the of scientific as well as the public circles.
I really appreciate the kind words, brother. Do you know? Have you noticed? Have you done something? You feel that you've done something that you climbed out of that season, or do you think it was time, or do you think there's no difference?
I think it's an excellent question, and it's fresh. We're talking months here.
Okay. How long was the period? How long was the period of emptiness or whatever you want to call it?
Probably a good 2-3 years.
Oh, it's long.
Yeah. It wasn't just a few months. It was long enough for me to forget.
Wow.
What was possible.
So, do you think that you've done something to bring it about? To change?
It's a fair question. Let me give it some thought.
Sure.
I think yes, in part. Definitely, there needs to be some action on the part of the participant. There needs to be some action on my part to set things off in the right direction. But it isn't isolated, right? We don't live isolated from everyone else. There was opportunities throughout those 3 years for me to wake up and change things. And I didn't, and I didn't, and I didn't, and I didn't. And then one day I took one of those opportunities that was provided to me. And so, yes, I did do something. But also you asked, or was it just time? And I don't think it's an or.
It's together.
Yeah, I think it was the right time and I took the opportunity.
That was the expression that needed to happen in the change. Yeah, I think I align with that pretty strongly. I would say that's exactly how I see it. Oh, and before I forget again, just a reminder, because now we have enough people on the live. If you guys want to help our Twitch grow, go now to Twitch. It's LaserX83. If you want to follow from there, it will help the channel grow. LaserX83. It really helps if you guys stream, watch the stream there. So, now that you've rediscovered, how does it express yourself in your day to day, mostly, or just in your internal space for now?
I suppose you can express it itself in my day to day in having something to apply myself to, and I'm sure this is probably an ADD thing or something like that, but if I don't have something interesting to apply myself to, I don't have energy to apply to something. Right? right? So they're very closely intertwined.
Yep.
So now I have something that's interesting, and I have the energy. They happened at the same time.
That's amazing.
I think that answers your question.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm going to do my best to kind of bounce between our conversations on Discord and some questions. So first of all, you're correct. Real spirituality, that I am talking to somebody who is on Discord, actually. And you guys can always come to our Discord, find the link in the link tree right here on TikTok, and I can bring you up. If you're on TikTok, I can also bring you up here, by the way. You can just request to speak. But just make sure that you drop a subject so we know what we're going to be talking about and if it's interesting enough for most people. Thank you so much, brother, also for following on Twitch. I appreciate it. And we'll take one from YouTube, which is Daniel saying, reality is thoughts projected in form. Do you agree with the statement? If it's just as the naked statement, it depends what you mean by reality. When I say reality, I mean everything that exists. Everything. If you say, yeah, but maybe reality is something, or influenced by something, then you're no longer talking about what I mean by reality. Because if it has something behind it, now that's the full reality. Reality is everything that can possibly exist to me, right? So if you ask if you're referring to this reality, then no, I disagree with this statement. Because if you're saying that there's a thought that becomes a form, you've already conceded that there's something that the thought becomes. Then you have to talk about that something. Or you have to talk about the mechanisms by which the thing transforms from a pure idea to whatever it is that you call form. So to me, that substantiation is important, and it's not a B story. It's actually an A story. You know, for a lot of people, especially people who follow people like Matthias De Stefano, for them, it seems to me, for them, it's kind of like, let's just, free ourselves from the shackles of matter and just think about all the most crazy things. To me, I live in the margin between. Like there's definitely something going on with our consciousness and how it translates to larger consciousness, but I am not in the camp of people that thinks that matter doesn't matter. I think it actually matters quite a bit, quite literally. What are your thoughts on this, by the way, Sean?
Yeah, so it's funny. So I went to a Mensa gathering today.
Yeah, apparently you're a genius, so that's amazing. Apparently you're a genius, so that's amazing.
Yeah, well, I'm sure I'm not the only one in the group. But it was.
I was sorry. I'm cutting you.
I wasn't aware that. I thought it was an AG. An AG is an annual gathering, kind of a social gathering for Mensa members, and they have presentations and all that. And I didn't read quickly enough. I didn't read properly. I read too quickly, and it's an AGA. So it was actually the administrative council meeting today.
Mm-hmm.
So the bad news is I didn't get to present the presentation that I was working on with Carter today.
I'm sure it will happen.
The good news is, you're currently speaking to the new Secretary Treasurer of Mensa Montreal.
Whoa, that's amazing.
It worked out, and we'll have no problem. Yeah, we'll have no problems getting presentations booked in the future with the Mensa gatherings.
So this is a good opportunity to say that on the 25th, which is the next Saturday, I think it's 1 p.m. Let me double check because this is a good 1 p.m. I think Eastern time. Let me check. 1 second. Yes, it will be at 12:30 Eastern time. I will be giving an IPI talk, which is part of IPI Letters, which is a physics. It's a journal, but also they do some peer review and some just kind of publications. That's where we publish our paper. And I'm going to be giving a presentation that I'm working on still, and it's going to be kind of like the culmination of all my thoughts on this topic. And usually they do it for the members and some people that were invited, but so it's mostly for physicists. But this time, the owner, Melvin, the organizer, Melvin Vopson, also told me, feel free to invite anybody you want. We have a new thing so we can bring more people. So anybody who wants to join this, it will be actually just email me to lasersimulationx@gmail.com. And just for simplicity's sake, maybe title the email IPI Talk. So I'm going to see all the IPI talks quickly, and then just I see your name, and I'll send you an invite for that thing. Anyways, that would be probably, Carter already gave a few presentations. This is going to be my version of how I see this, everything that's going on and the implications. And it's fun and challenging because I do want to maybe impress. Is not going to happen because I don't have the formal education on that level to, show formalizations to physicists, but I definitely want to deliver something that they will feel that is valuable, at least in the ideation space, and it's going to include some of my ideas about what's happening there and all that stuff. So I'm excited about that. Also, a little, like, I don't know if I'm nervous, but I'm definitely like, okay, I don't know. Let's see how we deliver this, because when you talk to physicists, there is this little like, okay, these guys really know what's happening, so it's kind of like,
yeah, they know what's happening. Yes, on a lot of fronts, but because they have such a solid understanding of the fundamental workings of the material world, they sometimes lead to conclusions in their own understanding that they really don't have a full understanding about. I don't know if that came across right, but what I mean is that
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah,
they know more than they do.
Yep.
Because they're so used to having a solid understanding of this very broad and comprehensive subject.
That is absolutely correct. I always say that that's usually a condition that a lot of smart people suffer from, because they're so used to being right, because they are, that they forget that sometimes they can be wrong, and it's very easy the easiest thing to suffer from for a really smart person is this minor delusion that actually, it's actually funny because that element of like knowing that thinking that how difficult can it be is amplified for people who are really smart, because they know they can figure things out in their domain so easily, and then they go to another domain and then they actually make super rookie's mistake there, and they forget that other people, just the amount of work that they dedicated in their domains, people dedicated decades in these other domains, and they don't realize that they're just they sound like little kids to these people. So it's like it's really funny to watch.
A little taste of it tonight, actually, because I didn't get to present officially, but there were opportunities after the meeting to we gathered afterwards and had supper, and I chatted with a couple of people, one of which was more on the spiritual side and who had partaken in ayahuasca and was more open-minded to what I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And then she goes, "Oh, you need to meet what was his name? You need to meet Danny over here." Actually, his name was Danny as well. Danny's a physicist. And I'm like, great, okay, this is going to be my first opportunity talking with a real legitimate physicist about this. And within 8 seconds, you just saw the barrier come up, and closed-minded. He wanted to know nothing more. As soon as I started talking about consciousness and physics in the same sentence, it was done.
Oh, really?
So
really,
I still need more practice.
So here, I got to tell you. So
that door open with some.
Yeah, no. So this is something that, sorry, I'm cutting you off. I'm just like, I like this topic a lot. So yeah, so like, it's true that they can, to some degree, suffer from the Dunning-Kruger effect, that, in that way, in the domains that they don't know. For example, somebody recently sent me a conversation, a talk that this really known physicist gave about his conundrum with qualia. And he was like, and obviously the argument is, this guy is such a genius in all these domains of technical science. And here he also figured this out that philosophers never even thought about. And I said, bro, that's just philosophy 101. This is nothing. Like, he's just talking in circles around himself. There's entire books about this. Like, this is not, so that absolutely happen. But what I actually found is that, because I've joined IPI talks quite a bit in the last couple of years. I was listening to a lot of them. I was going, asking questions. There's actually enormous openness to these other components of more spiritual, like way more than neuroscientists, by the way, from physicists. I was very surprised by this. Maybe it's just the nature of what IPI is, which is like they're a lot more open-minded and things like this. However, the reason that I know that it's going to be a little different this time is because when you're not making the claims, you're just somebody who they get to bounce some wild ideas off of. But the second you're the one making the claim, that's different. Now they're looking at you with their sharp physicist eyes and saying, wait a second. Like you really got to make sure that you got all your, because what I'm acutely aware that when people present it to me, and I'm not a physicist, but I know enough about physics to know that people just run in these infinite directions forever, but their first assumption was wrong. So like, where are you going? Like you went so far, but the first thing you said was wrong. So what was the point of this whole thing? You built your entire assumption on a house of cards. I'm really careful of not doing that because I really, as I'm working on this talk, I really have to really make sure that what I'm saying wasn't based on some interesting thought I had, versus like I found myself like going back and like, reading all these things and like really making sure that what I said was not something that I saw one time at 3 a.m. in some Neil deGrasse Tyson special, that they was just talking about something general, like pop science, basically. I really had to make sure that I all my terms are correct and everything that I'm talking about is correct. So in that sense, I am much more careful. But when you said what you just said, what popped to my mind is that there's definitely, I guess, if that was your experience with a physicist, I guess there's a lot more of the physicists that are much more open-minded that come to IPI. Maybe that's the address, because literally we had a guy. IPI had a talk by his name is what's his name? Oh, Quantum Doug. What a great name. And he is a physicist, and apparently he's like a really accomplished one. Like I think he's in the University of Texas, but he's an old timer. He's been in the game for a long time. He got enormous grants of millions of dollars. Like he did serious things. Like he's not some kind of a like somebody who just started or anything like this. Like a guy super accomplished. On the side, he was also working on this like another theory that it has to do with what he calls existence. I forget how he pronounces it, but from the word existence. And he was openly saying, he's like, look, I understand that this is not everybody's cup of tea, but I am telling you that I am in direct communication with these higher realms, and I am receiving a lot of my information that I then verify with my physics ability. But I am telling you that I know that these things are real. And he even brought a light language girl on his talk to do like light language right next to him. I was like, what? I was like, where did we land? What's going on right now? This is wild. This is so, yeah, there's definitely a lot of openness, but at the same time, I know that when you're making all the propositions, they still going to be, it's a natural response when you come to somebody else's home and you're making strong claims. It's a natural response to be a little bit more cautious with what you take on board. But I was very surprised. It was kind of wild. Like I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Literally, this girl is doing like light language on Zoom, and he is talking about and he's again like a super mainstream guy. So I think that's the address to have these conversations. IPI Talks would be the right place to present a lot of this information.
Yeah, well, I mean, based on what you're saying, it sounds like the right place to start for sure. And keep in mind that this was one anecdotal situation, one meeting that I had with one physicist. It doesn't necessarily speak to the entire community and their points of view or their open or closed-mindedness, right?
Mm-hmm.
But your experiences and what this guy was proposing and what IPI is open to, it speaks to the shift that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
All right, people as a whole the scientific community as a whole is made up of people. And people, whatever the root cause might be, are experiencing a shift.
Oh yeah.
On a lot of you know, and it's happening across different disciplines. It's happening across different interests. You know, there's a lot of convergence going on with a lot of different areas of interest. I mean, you're seeing it with all the various directions that intake is coming from towards your project, right? There's a lot of lines are being crossed, and we're seeing how it's all connected in some way. And it's the ones that are open-minded to this that are going to be making the leaps and bounds, that are going to be making the world-changing breakthroughs, you know? So I'm happy to hear that IPI is like that. So I'm definitely going to send you an email about getting an invite to the talk.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think it will be a good one. And I'm actually excited to be grilled to some degree. Like, I want to hear what people with high technical skills, I want to see what are the main concerns that they have. I actually already had an interaction with someone from IPI. It's a member. He's a physicist, and he read my paper on IPI, and he kind of sent me some stuff about methodology, and we had a back and forth. So that was interesting. That was that was a good step in the right direction. But yeah, that's the thing that I really want to hear more than anything. How does it hit people? What are their concerns? How they view? What do they see as problematic? What do they see as exciting? Because again, when you dive deeper and deeper into these waters, it becomes clear that something is missing in the general ideation around physics right now. And I mean, I think for most of us here, it will be obvious what it is. But when you're taught your whole life to rely on the scientific method in the way that it is expressed in academia, I can totally see how it's so hard to shake it off. Because to me, the problem is clear. I'm not saying I have some kind of a solution, but at least identifying what the problem is very clear to me. You can no longer ignore the biggest elephant in the room, which is consciousness. You can't. Yeah. You can, because the assumption is like one day we'll solve it, and somehow no. Okay, we've said it long enough. You can no longer do this. You have to deal with the fact that even you being able to do all of this is the fact that you have consciousness, and you're going to keep ignoring it. That's why you're going to keep running into all these issues and paradoxes, because you're ignoring a giant chunk in the middle that is actually doing all the work, really.
I like the way you put that. It's like you're using consciousness to come to your conclusions, and yet you're not including consciousness in your conclusion
because they don't know how. But it is the classical case of I forget exactly how the example goes, but basically it's like you lost your keys at home, but you're looking at for the keys outside on the street where there's a street lamp. Why? Because there's a light there. So it's like, okay, but you left it at home, so why are you looking at here? Like, it's like it's not here, so there's no way you're gonna find it here. It's like, well, at least that's where there's a light. So basically, it's kind of like this complete delusion. Daniel's saying, what do you think about this? Judgment binds you to the system and locks you into opposition. Give me 1 second. 1 second, guys.
Yeah.
My daughter was crying for way longer than usual, so I was like, what's going on? She's got hungry in the middle of the okay. What do I think about this? Judgment binds you to the system and locks you into opposition. If you are judgmental to self or other, you cannot see truth. It's concealed from you. When you judge, you hold the energy of what you resist. So it's true, but so the truth is that you're not going to escape this, right? So as long as you are not the totality of everything, so as long as you're not the unified field of everything, you will always have something that isn't you to you, right? So to me, and this is again, sorry, I'm always bringing. I mean, you asked me about Matthias, so I'm using it as an example today. But that is my main departure from that point of view, because it doesn't make any sense to call this an illusion to what we're experiencing. It doesn't make any sense to me ignoring the fact that you have to go through this level. Whatever happens later, that's fine, but you have to grapple with the fact that you're here doing this. If you stub your toe in the middle of the night, if I tell you it's an illusion, you're not going to care. It hurts. That matters, right? So when, for example, you're saying that ultimately, yeah, you can say that it's not even judgment. It's any perception of something that isn't you, right? Instead of just being the all. But that's everything in the universe, everything in existence aside from the unified field. And the punchline is that if you do become the unified field or nirvana, whatever you imagine the state to be, then none of this matters anymore. Quite literally, again, just kind of funny how words work. But like it no longer matters. So like nobody's there to make the point. Nobody's there to, do something with the point. It just is what it is, and that's it. And this is why, aside from emphasizing the harmony, which is, I think, important for all the levels. So like it is preferable to be harmonious no matter what level of emergence you are on, right? It doesn't matter how many dimensions you made out of it. As long as you're capable of experiencing something, a more harmonious experience, by definition, is more worth having for any level, right? So that is important to emphasize. So the degree to which these kinds of statements help people do that, I'm all for it. But again, that's different than making it a truth proposition. It is true, but it's true in a way that is arbitrary, because it's kind of like saying, is it true that atoms are doing something to make things go in the world? Yeah, but you didn't say anything. Like it's trivial. It's like, yes, but so what? Like but to the degree that it helps you achieve harmony and resist things less and all of that, yes. But there's a difference between the utilitarian function of that statement and the truth claim function of that statement, or at least that's the way that I perceive this whole conundrum. What consciousness teach them? They are God. Okay, there is consciousness, but what is what it changes in physics? Well, a simple example: whatever your consciousness is doing is clearly influencing physics. Not only that, it seems to be the most substantial thing. So it's not grand in scale currently, but this is a point that David Deutsch makes in his book, The Beginning of Infinity, which is a very powerful point. Knowledge, which is a form of information as it's instantiated in minds, in experiencing people, right, has the power to recapitulate and copy any law of physics in a targeted way. And it's the only force that, if you look at knowledge as a force in the universe, it's the only one that has the potential to not dissipate over space and time. That is unheard of. So the first statement is that he makes in the book is that the only places in the universe that we know of that have fusion currently are the cores of stars and in human labs where the proper knowledge exists of how to do so. Think about this. The only two places in the universe that we know about that there's fusion is at the core of stars, which you can imagine the crazy pressure in there, and where the proper knowledge in a lab exists, how to do that in a targeted way. So what does it do to physical matter? If you give it enough time, everything, anything it wants. And that is, and I don't know if you know this, but currently, as far as we know, the coldest place in the universe is in one of our refrigerators. Because space, even intergalactic space, does not get that cold. We currently on Earth have the coldest place in the universe. That's wild. That has everything to do with knowledge, which has everything to do with a certain kind of information, as it is instantiated in an experience of beings like ourselves. So I would say quite a bit it has to say about the physical world. In fact, the fate of the universe rests on consciousness if, and I believe that is the case, consciousness already is everything and is just kind of the remembering of that. This is why knowledge and consciousness is so powerful. And I would even say that we're probably going to live in a period where it's going to become more and more clear in our lifetime, like that kind of that shift between complete insignificance to becoming all of a sudden aware of the level of responsibility that we actually hold. I would say it has everything to do with physical matter, because it gives rise to states that the universe couldn't even imagine itself.
Well said.
Well, thank you. What is how do you join Mensa, by the way? You just do tests? Is that what the...
Well, you have to do a test in front of a proctor.
Okay.
So it's it just has to be a supervised test. There's 2 different tests that are recognized, at least in Canada. One of them is one that can introduce cultural bias because it includes questions that depend on language comprehension.
Mm-hmm.
And in that one, you have to answer 50 questions in 12 minutes. It's an insane amount of questions in 12 minutes. That's the one I did. And then there's one that's supposed to be cultural bias free, which is more akin to, do you know what Raven matrices are?
What matrices?
Raven's matrices.
Radens?
Ravens, yeah. So
Ravens.
The ones where you have like 4 squares, and it shows you square A is this, square B is this, square C
yes,
is that,
yes.
what is square D?
Mm-hmm. I didn't know it was called that, but okay. Yeah.
Sorry?
I didn't know it was called Raven matrices, but I just Googled the picture. Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, okay, so that's the other one.
That's a fun one, by the way. I love that one.
Yeah, it's actually, after having taken the regular one, I then understood the Ravens matrices a lot better, because I understood that they were testing, I thought they all were following like a sequential complexity curve,
Mm-hmm.
but they're really testing different things as they go along. So there'll be like, out of the 50, there might be, 12 that are testing a certain subsection of IQ, and then another 12 that are testing another subsection. So it's completely different logic moves among sections.
Interesting. Yeah. Oh, I see. There's like a website where you can actually do it. That's fun. Yeah. Wait, what? There was something else that I wanted to bring up and also ask you about as a spin-off of that question. Hold on, let me read the question again, and maybe it will refresh my memory. And feel free to jump in if you have anything else to say while I'm looking at the question. What do you think about the... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one thing that you mentioned earlier that reminded me of a point I wanted to make in the presentation is specifically when you're dealing with people who might tend to be more closed-minded because of their expertise in a certain field, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's something I'm very conscious of, and I tried to craft the presentation around, because I knew the type of crowd that I'd be presenting to. So the way the presentation would have played out, I'm still looking forward to the opportunity I'll have to present it if ever there's another AG coming up. And for you as well, if ever you wanna see what I put together and give me your 2 cents, I'd love that opportunity as well.
Absolutely. Send it over.
Yeah, will do. And one of the points that I think you mentioned that I think is important to recapitulate is that people will jump on assumptions,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of my slides addresses exactly that. And it was actually, I show a quote by Donald Hoffman.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about the difference between a good theory and a great theory. And he says a good theory has a scope of explanation and will give you the math to explore within that scope. right? And he says a lot of theories don't even have that. They don't even have scope because they tend to, you know, think of themselves as theories of everything, or be presented as theories of everything. So a good theory will at least have a scope of explanation and let you explore within that scope. A great theory gives you the tools to figure out the limits of the explanation entailed by the very assumptions that started the theory. Okay, so there's a lot of weight, a lot of responsibility that comes along with proposing even an assumption before you even get to the point of a theory, right? So I made a point in the presentation to mention that, you know, Project Veilbreak currently isn't proposing any theory. That's not what Project Veilbreak is about. Project Veilbreak is about providing a methodology, the protocol, from which we want solid assumptions and scientific rigor to lead to verifiable theories. You know, so I hoped by presenting it in that way that it would kind of like quell the natural instinct to jump on an assumption by reassuring them there's no assumptions being made here. We're not saying anything about consciousness or physics. This is what it is. This is the protocol. Try it yourselves. And you guys come to the assumption. You guys develop hypotheses. You guys test them. You know, this is what we have. So, you know, it's kind of passing the buck.
No, it's a brilliant way. Absolutely. You're creating a lot less resistance. You're creating openness. What I would do, and this is what I'm trying to do in my talk, what I do is I fully acknowledge the position we're in, which is exactly what you just said, and I fully support that. What I do like to do at the end is say, but just like in any good, you know, theory or theory in the making, the thing that is always operating in the background is the assumptions. Here's some of mine. And then you just basically saying, look, this is the ideas I'm playing with currently. I'm not putting it on the table as the truth. I'm telling you this because I am working on a theoretical framework. That's the idea, to kind of try and like solidify something that might track something. But if you present it in this way, then there's a lot less, you know, pressure to deliver something that is substantiated. That's not there yet, but I do think that there's a way to substantiate something there. What I like to present is the kinds of ways with which we're approaching even the theoretical framework and why I believe it might hold water, and also leave them with how I am proposing for it to be disproven. So it has to be, you have to be able to disprove it. So like, because, so if you have a demarcation line, I'm happy, right? So it's like, that's the, if you leave them with that, I think they would be satisfied. And by the way, actually, Chili Shot would just said, and that's a really good question, Chili Shot. He said 3 times at least you explained already here what means scientific method, but please explain to me what physics and scientific method has with consciousness. That's actually a really good question. And it has to do with this scope that science allows itself to play within. The scientific method, I mean, as you can imagine, it would also differ for depending who you ask, right? But if I have to give it the most kind of like neutral answer, the way that I view it, the scientific method is essentially, it came as an answer to the fact that the human mind is so confabulatory. That's why it was so hard to make progress at scale. You had geniuses throughout the ages that could see through, but in order for science to take hold, you needed an entire culture that adheres to the same rules and operates together as a unit. Without that, you just have a scattered field of ideas that it's enough for some regions of that space to have slightly different pointing vectors for the whole thing to fall apart, which is essentially what the human history was for the most part. You had rules of thumb, you had small domains of expertise in which some experts were, you know, living that their whole lives. A good example is a carpenter, right? No relationship to Jesus right now, just carpenters. Because carpentry required some proto-scientific understanding of angles, of arcs, of why certain materials respond a certain way to a particular region, with how it absorbs, moisture. All these, it's very complex. But people who've been doing this for decades and decades and decades, and then they would impart their knowledge to their son or some somebody who they were teaching it to. Yes, there were some rules by which they were teaching them that, but those were mostly rules of thumb. And before we developed like very accurate measuring tools, for the most part, it was like eyeballing. And the eyeballing of the expert was a lot greater because their mind was the one containing the experiential knowledge of what works and what doesn't work and how often. What changed when the scientific method came along is that we found a way to annotate, write down, and talk about units of measurements that were so precise that now you can put people through school of architecture that without having 30 years of experience, obviously they need some experience. There's no question that trial and error still has to be involved. But just from the theoretical framework alone, if they're good enough, they can actually function quite close to what some of the experts used to be able to do. And then, of course, its experience still has to play a role. But that dialing it down to a method that can be passed down not just through minds, but in literature, through like hardcore ideas about what reality says is possible and not possible. And the harder the science, according to how we define hard science and soft science, or like hard science would be physics, soft science would be psychology, right? The reason it's hard and soft, these words just refer to how accurately you're describing what can or cannot happen, and statistically, like what is the domain of margin of error you're operating within. That's what the scientific method is. In short, the scientific method is a way to institutionalize knowledge. Okay. Now, it's a good thing, and we are all happy about that when we're getting on a plane.
Yeah.
Airlines, as much as we have complaints about them, including myself, would not be possible. Not just would be hard, they would not be possible at all without the scientific method. Would not be possible. There's too many variables that have to be gotten exactly right every time. Otherwise, planes would be falling out of the sky every single day. Like it would be impossible. The nature of the world is such that there's always some error. It's not just in code writing. So like, everybody who did any code writing ever knows that debugging is simply the biggest part of the game, because there's no such thing as writing code without an error. And it has nothing to do, by the way, just with the fact that the human mind is not perfect. You can build the most perfect machine. AI is right now making mistakes, and then they have to debug it. That's because there's something fundamentally in nature itself that always, sometimes there would be an error. It's ingrained in reality itself. And there is some error correcting mechanism, which, by the way, some physicists exploring also from a computational standpoint, how that happens on the level of the laws of physics. Why are the laws of physics, quote unquote, perfect? That's a real question, by the way. And there are some ideas and blah, blah, blah. So, but I digress. So how it connects to consciousness is a really great question, because you're right. If we are talking about inculcation of knowledge into a methodology that can exist on a large scale, and consciousness is something that is truly undefinable even currently, people still kind of argue what that is. Well, I would say that it has to do with us becoming a little more comfortable with expanding the horizon of how we define science, which is the point that I'm always writing on, which is, to me, science proper, or science with a capital S, the archetype of science. What science is in the largest scale of existence, what it should be, is the enterprise of understanding. Full stop. The second you do that, it becomes clear that what you're then interested in is not just the things that you can inculcate in these like super accurate ways, but you're just asking yourself, what do you understand about the world, and to what degree of accuracy and replication? And then, well, this, whatever this is that you're experiencing, for a fact that's real. In fact, it's the only thing for sure. This is a point that Sam Harris usually makes, which is that the fact that you're experiencing something is more salient to you than even the existence of the universe itself. As far as you can tell, even that can be an illusion. But one thing that cannot possibly be an illusion is the fact that you're experiencing something right now. Notice that I didn't say that we're asking how it came about. That can also be talked about, like you can be, like I'm saying, in a simulation, it can be laws of physics, it can be a million other things. But the fact that it results in you experiencing something right now, you don't need a grant. You don't need anything to prove it to you. You have it. This is it, right? So that fact alone should be included in the fact about the world. And by the way, even if you want to play the game of just physicalism, which I'm very happy with, I think physicalism is very useful for engineering. I hope my engineers, the engineers of this world, are thinking about the world as physical, because that's what they got to make sure that they're doing that right. But even if you want to play the physicalist game, even there, you have to do, well, they don't do a lot of work to do it. They just kind of ignore it. But it does escape very smart people the fact that if you believe there's just a physical universe and in it somehow minds arise, this little spiel that I gave you about knowledge 20 minutes ago, think about that for a second. So even if consciousness is just an arising property in the universe somewhere, and it's tiny and insignificant in comparison to the power, might, and size of the universe, the fact that whatever you see around you right now, all the electrical devices, houses, everything in the human world was once in somebody's head as an idea, and then became what you see around you. And by the way, without those ideas, these physical structures would not exist in their current form. So if you run the clock forward, and I made this point on this live many times, a lot of you already heard it, but if you run the clock forward, and it doesn't matter how long, you can run it a million years if you want, for the example to hold water and work. Everything that is in people's minds, the more we understand the world and have more and more capabilities, just like right now we can do fusion in a lab or cool the temperature down to colder than the absolute coldest place in the universe, eventually we'll be able to do something on a scale of a black hole and do something with it. And at that point, we become the dominant force in the universe. And that's not a crazy thought. And that should be included in the model that thinks about what is possible in the world. And there are already attempts like that. This is why I'm always raving about David Deutsch so much, because aside from being one of the most capacious minds, to my mind, that are still living today, he is thinking along so many different channels at once in a way that is substantial, not just just general ideation. And one of these deepest ideas, which is what he developed with I always forget her first name. I think Chiara Marletto, the Italian physicist. She was his PhD student. Together they developed constructor theory. And the reason constructor theory stands out among all the other physics theories is because it proposes to remove what currently physics considers to be the fundamental thing. So, or stop considering it as the fundamental thing, which is spin, momentum, and all the stuff that physics considered fundamental. What constructor theory states, it says, what we're going to look at is not just one modality, which is the measurement of how we measure particles. We're going to look at what is possible, or to be more accurate, what transformations are possible and what transformations are impossible according to the laws of physics as we know today. And by the way, there is such a thing as impossible. So that gives you a much more broad framework of what you're actually asking. And then under that kind of schema, you can actually think about even emerging properties. Even if you believe that consciousness is an emerging property and not fundamental, it makes no difference. If it can eventually exhibit the amount of influence on the universe that no other force can compete with, even if it just arose later and wasn't the first thing that happened, it makes no difference whatsoever. It is now included in what transformations are possible. And if that thing, i.e. knowledge in this case, thank you for the support, I appreciate it, brother. If that thing, if you see that you have strong reasons to believe, not just in ideas, but like mathematically, that thing, that constructor, like ourselves, the universal constructor, can, even in potential, actually create all the possible transformations that are possible according to the laws of physics, you don't get to ignore it as a secondary thing. You get to say, what is that? That's very interesting. That's how consciousness relates to, no matter what frame you want to hold. That's how consciousness relates to physical, and what it should, how it should be included in the scientific method. Thoughts, Sean?
I mean, you said it pretty well, man.
Well, I'm glad.
Yeah, there's something about the. You said something earlier about it's a causal effect thing, right?
Mhm.
We can argue all day about what the source is, right? Is it consciousness arising from physics? Is it physics arising from consciousness? But I really like the theory that you just brought up. It's actually the first time, the theory met more the framework that you just brought up. First time I've heard it brought across, talking about the transformations and what is possible and what isn't possible. I was wondering if you could give an example of one of the things that in this framework, or just overall, would be considered an impossible transformation.
Okay. Well, you're asking me.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were gonna give it. Okay, I was like all ears. Okay, let's come up with one. No problem. Also, somebody Wordplay said, "Do you identify as a laserist?" That's very funny. I like it. Okay. Well, there are certain emergent properties that are not possible prior to other emergent properties. So that would be one. So you can say anything is possible, even in a. So this is a point that Stephen Wolfram made in his computational framework, right? So when you're looking at the hypergraph and the Reulead, which are the two graphs responsible for, sorry, the causal graph, the hypergraph, and the Reulead, which are the three graphs kind of like describing at least the entire framework that will describe our world, including the rules by which our laws of physics evolve, all the possible steps, computational steps that are possible in our universe, and the hypergraph basically is the graph of all the hyper edges of the causal graph that are like all the interconnected points and the way that they can be connected. So that covers everything, including quantum mechanics, like everything. What he said is that, well, as it branches out, according to some initial rules that also evolve, by the way, you can say that anything is possible ultimately, because it will explore all possible domains and spaces and perturbations, but not everything is possible in any order. So you can't have a spaceship before you have the kind of mind that can think and connect all the dots and build the things, and so that would be like just a simple example of that. And that is, you can say that is impossible. Like, and you can show this statistically. You can show this from in terms of perturbations. You can show this. To be quite honest, I'm ashamed to say that I never dove deeper into the technicalities of constructor theory, and I think I should at this point because I'm raving about it quite a bit. But something I highly recommend. It sounds like you won't have a problem. I'm pretty sure you're pretty autodidactic. So if you look into it currently, I know that Chiara Marletto, she ran with it like it's her hobby horse now. David Deutsch kind of moved on to other things, but she's spearheading it. If I remember correctly, they're relying heavily on looking at thermodynamics and like utilizing thermodynamics to claim make the assessments of what's possible and what's impossible in terms of transformations, and what kind of transformations are possible when, under what regimes, under what energy levels, things like this. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. I have to admit, and it saddens me to say, because I'm like, I love it, but I don't find her to be a very exciting communicator of the theory. I find every time I watch an interview with her, I'm like, man, something is missing here, and it's sad because she's brilliant. She's but it's like, it doesn't compare to David Deutsch talking about it. And no, it has nothing to do with the fact that she's a woman. Lisa Randall, I think, is one of the best communicators of her theory, and but it's yeah. I don't know why that is, but it's just not very compelling to me. But I would look at the technicalities of it. That's a really good question. Thank you for making me think about this for a second, because actually, let me think about things that don't rely on order. I want to have more examples of this. That's a really good direction to think about. So, order of things definitely is an easy one. What else is impossible? I really love an old Eddie Izzard joke. He says something, 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 and that's impossible. And then he goes, and yes, some things are impossible. You can't eat the Everest. How do I know it? Try it. So Eddie Izzard, he's a comedian. He said something, something, something. Then, and he said about something else. He said, and that's impossible. And then, as a preamble to all the people that would say, well, everything is possible, he says, and yes, some things are impossible. For example, you can't eat the Everest. And then he goes, how do I know this? Try it. Yeah. And that will be, oh yeah, we're adding this one to the list. You can't eat the Everest. That's impossible.
I mean, you can't, but I mean, there's things that
you
theoretically somewhere in the universe.
Just like Thanos, I don't even know how to put it. It's just well, okay, but you can't. So there you go. It's like, so the fact that humans can't eat the Everest is a pretty solid claim. I really, to me, this domain of human psychology and stubbornness is actually a very interesting one, because it's you meet this. It's very obvious where you meet this is all the stuff that I was always kind of trying to gently, sometimes not so gently correct, which is when people say things like, whatever you think becomes. And then I say, okay, walk through the wall. But then the interesting part is that is actually not doing any heavy lifting for people if they already believe this. And to me, that's amazing. Like, how do you not see that clearly there's limitations to what you want to be, right? Isn't that interesting if you think that anything is possible? So what is happening in somebody's brain when that happens? And it has to be some form of just, I don't know, a game of hide and seek with your own concepts. I don't even know what's happening there, right? But what's even more interesting is that you see this with people who A, should know better, and B, they're like geniuses. And yet they fall into these like really simple traps, and it still happens. So just from a scientific methods perspective, just logical deduction, so for sure, that's not an artifact of IQ or being smart, because clearly that person is smart, right? But they still make that mistake. So it must be something else. And I really wonder what that is. It must be some kind of just maybe cognitive protection. Like, if you're already married to a frame, you would try. This is a point that Charles Einstein once made. He said, we don't really reason ourselves into our positions. We use reason to defend our positions. And I think that's true. There's like a vibe that you want it to be. And if anything is expressed against that vibe, or in a way that doesn't mimic the vibe, you are much less likely. Even so, if, for example, people are more politically affiliated with more left or right, I bet you, I haven't looked at the data, but I'm willing to bet money on the fact that if somebody shares the political party with someone, they would tend to listen to them more, even on subjects that are super technical and just like it's either true or not true. And they would still listen to that person more, even if they're usually like a scientist or something. I bet you that's true. I haven't looked at the data, but I bet you that is true. And I think it has something to do with that. It's almost like it's just a vibe of the world that you want to see emanated more, because that's what you want or care about. And anybody who exhibits that vibe, so it's more a battle of vibes than of concrete thoughts. I rarely see people can override it. Sorry, go ahead.
And to your point about what's going on in the human brain when these undefendable positions are being defended, the cognitive dissonance that a human mind goes through sometimes to defend a position, we're willing to die on some hills sometimes, and we don't even know why or how we got on top of that hill. And I don't know if you know her. I really like the way this girl talks. It was like 10 years ago I saw this talk. On YouTube, her channel is Julia Galef, Galef.
Wait. I want to see a face. Julia, Galef?
Yeah, her last name, Galef.
Wait, is she a physicist?
Yeah. Mathematician, sorry.
Okay, it's not the girl with the lasers.
No, but I know who you're talking
about.
Yeah,
okay.
With the Asian girl you're thinking of?
She looks more Indian than Asian, or maybe I'm just, yeah. But yeah.
Perhaps since I've seen it, and excuse my...
Well, I guess, no, I stand corrected. Indians are Asian, so...
Well, so there's a talk that she did that was talking about, but the reason I landed upon her was with Bayesian thinking, right? I was doing some presentation years back on Euclidean mathematics. And oh boy, long story about how I got there. But essentially what I was trying to do, it all started with trying to build up a lunch and learn for my software developer colleagues on the point I wanted to get to was to try and inspire them to think outside the box. And then that presentation evolved into, well, how do you think outside of the box? And then, okay, well then let's look at examples in history where people came to these eureka moments, right? Where, Archimedes being the perfect example of where the phrase was coined. With the water coming out of the bathtub and how to measure the displacement, how to measure the volume of irregular objects through water displacement. And through my research, and I was, slapping these facts together and these examples together. And then again, the presentation morphed into something about those eureka moments. Okay, are they reproducible? And then trying to see what it is that led up to these eureka moments. And if you can reproduce the conditions that led to the eureka moment, can you have eureka moments on command? And to do that, to get to that, you have to get out of the habit of sticking to your old way of thinking. You have to let go of, and this is where I landed on Julia Galef's videos. She was talking about orphaned thoughts. Okay, so orphaned beliefs, I apologize. So an orphan belief, if you haven't heard the term before, is just an idea where, we're born and then see some things and we have some initial assumptions, some initial core beliefs that we developed based on the things that we saw around us. You drop a ball, it's going to hit the floor. Oh, that's a different kind of ball. Well, this one bounces when it hits, right? So core beliefs start with things about perhaps the physical world. But then as we grow, the physical heuristics get developed very quickly, and those shortcuts happen automatically pretty young. We figure out how to avoid doing front flip on our bike by the age of 10, and then we spend our teenage years and young adult years developing our social viewpoints and, maybe even our worldviews. And along the road, we see new evidence that leads us to new conclusions, and maybe we rewrite some conclusions that we had previously. But the way the human brain works, it doesn't go back down the chain. It doesn't go back down the chain and rewrite the core belief that led to that now confirmed wrong conclusion. Okay?
It never revisits it?
Sorry?
It never revisits it?
That's right. So the automatic synaptic process of changing your mind on something doesn't retroactively change the set of synapses or of conclusions or of opinions that led you to that now erroneously proven erroneous conclusion. So, okay, all your life you see, all your life you see blue balls are bouncing. I'll give you an example. Blue balls are bouncing, and every red ball you see just hits the ground. So you grow up with the belief that blue balls bounce, red balls hit the ground. One day you might see a blue ball just hit the ground and not bounce. So your brain will make the conclusion that, okay, blue balls can bounce or just land on the ground,
Okay.
right? But it won't retroactively correct the other assumptions that you had about the red balls, for example.
Okay.
Okay, that's you can rationally think about, like, oh, if I was wrong about this, then maybe I should revisit this belief system. That obviously is very possible. You can revisit your opinions on things, but the process isn't automatic. So if you don't make the conscious effort to revisit where those chains of beliefs came from, then what you're left is this term, the tree point, as far as I know. You're left with these orphaned beliefs. And those are those hills that people die on. Those are the hills that cause cognitive dissonance, where your brain is scrambling to find any reason to, or any justification for your point of view outside of the scope of what you know darn well should be the logical argument. You know, we see it all the time in politics. But in the case of our discussion, I think we see it, unfortunately, a little bit too much in the scientific fields as well, because we have such a rigorous structure, a rigorous method for leading us to conclusions that we can say, okay, now this is understood, and we build upon them. But for us to make a conclusion or propose a theory that challenges a previous conclusion or theory, we must also revisit all the way back down the chain of the sets of assumptions and theories that led to that now proven erroneous theory. Am I explaining that good?
Yeah. I'm just the reason that so for me. So I don't tell me if this departs from what you're saying, or it's essentially the same thing as what you're saying.
Sure.
The way that I view it, and I can speak from this is from my experience plus what I kind of gathered from how people perceive it when I talk to them about that.
Okay.
There is a gathering info machinery all the time, right? Forget about the fact for a second that the older you get, the less you interact with that machinery, because you kind of like, you dial things in. You become more comfortable. You kind of settle in your circle of friends. You go to work in the same way. You do things a certain way. So aside from the fact that neuroplasticity goes down, even your willingness to engage with it becomes less because you have less necessity to do so. That creates a certain kind of framework in your brain. So actually, sorry, before I go there. So let's even ignore that for a second. Let's pretend that even if that machinery would stay full throttle till the end of your life, which it doesn't, which influences the thing, but let's say it doesn't. Even then, there will be a situation in which you gather a lot of information all the time, but in order to function, you obviously have to steer yourself towards a particular, like one streamlined channel that allows you to act. Otherwise, you'll be paralyzed by all of these factors constantly, right? So what your brain is doing, it consolidates it into a world model that isn't just the perceptual model, but also the cognitive model. So like not just like how you perceive colors, not just qualia itself, which is the direct observatory kind of function, but also what you think about what's going on in any given moment. Kind of like your theory about how the world is, right? And it doesn't have to, and what it does, it, instead of constantly for you to needing to interact with every data point as a separate entity, when you interacted with a particular data point long enough, it folds it into that larger framework, which has more of a shape than details. It becomes more like just an average of the thing that influences you emotionally. And when I say emotionally, I mean just like physically in the sensations in the body. It just moves you. The levers that it pulls is like the feelings in the body. That's what intuition is too, by the way. So it's kind of like Daniel Kahneman, right? System 1, system 2, that heuristic. So like the second you have system 2 constantly trying to do the harder things, but most of the time it stays dormant because it takes a lot of energy. So you're always interacting with mostly system 1, which is just kind of like whatever is easiest is what you do. In order to stop and engage with system 2, which is much more like the calculation part. So to anybody who doesn't know, a way to summarize this is system 1, system 2 is this heuristic that Daniel Kahneman and forget the other guy's name, the researcher, they wrote a really good book called Thinking Fast and Slow. And in it, there's a kind of heuristic of system 1, system 2. System 1 would be the thing that does 2 plus 2. That thing in your brain that just said 4, that's system 1. You just know it. It's just automatic because you know. And depending on your level of expertise in a particular domain, it includes more things. So just like for you, 2 plus 2 is easy. For mathematicians, even though a lot of mathematicians are actually not really good at arithmetic, but there's certain concepts in mathematics that's very intuitive for them. Like they just kind of fly through it. They swim in these waters, right? It's already part of their system 1. There's something that for you will take like a week to think about. But that's because they engage system 2 for a long time. System 2 is the thing if I'm going to ask you to give me the square root of 3,645,773, whatever. Like, there's no way, right? That you're going to need to go like, okay, hold on. That's system 2. Okay. So when you have this thing consolidated into what you call your world perception, what I think is going on is for a lot of people, they don't actively engage with reopening these channels. It's almost like a skill that you have to point your attention to it on a regular basis, like a muscle you have to train to actually be comfortable with stopping everything and re-questioning even the portions of your world model. And to some degree, you would imagine scientists would be better at it, but for my interaction with scientists, they're not better at it. They're kind of just got locked into their little world. And it's very rare to find an individual who truly is like truly open-minded on a regular basis, and they have a lot less resistance. And my assumption there, and I don't know if it's true, but that's my hypothesis, is that it has to do with clarity. So if I have the kind of mind that is capable of seeing very clearly and not vaguely on any particular topic or conversation or whatever, I feel a lot less anxiety in my body, even if you are trying to take me to this separate idea that kind of departs from my regular world model, because I can see from where I am in my mind, I can see from where I am to what you're trying to say. And even if it departs strongly from what I'm saying, I don't feel anxiety because I can see there and I can see if it connects to mine. So I am always in equilibrium. I'm always like, I never leave my harmony. But the second you have vagueness, if somebody's trying to take you away from where you are and where you feel comfortable, you now feel more anxiety because you don't know if you're going to find your way home. You're kind of like there's too much energy involved. So your brain goes, I don't want to hear, like, I don't want to go there. And I think that's really what's happening. So it's like the people just get tired of traveling. So they just want to stay where they're at. They're like, there's nothing new under the sun, kid. You know, then they kind of land into that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So no, I confirm we're talking about the same thing.
Okay.
You just said it a lot more eloquently.
I'm not so sure. I went in circles quite a bit, but amalgamation of cognitive bias would be a good way.
The only point I think that kind of confused me for a second was when you chose to use the word clarity and vagueness.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not talking about clarity of thought, I don't think. You're talking about, it sounded more like you were talking about
Maybe visibility. Visibility is a better word. If I can see into the distance without fog. So I think that what happens is, for example, so if I can see clearly what you're saying and why, I for some reason automatically there's less anxiety in the body about, there's no resistance. Because so it's easy to see when you're talking to a child, right? So let me think of a specific example. Your kid comes back home, he tells you about something that happened in school. The child's interaction is so clear to you because they're just kind of operating with these very simple buttons, right? They said this to me, that got me upset, blah, 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 blah. Okay. You know, if they describe to you a situation, even that they can't see why that happened. Let's say they come and say, like, I don't know, I went and I spoke to Tom, and then I told him da da da, and then, you know, he was standing with Stephanie, and all of a sudden he's like, hey man, like he was really mean to me, and I didn't understand why. And you happen to know that, you know, I don't know what these names are like. I don't know if they're current, but whatever. It's like you're like, yeah. You're like, and you happen to know because you go to meetings that Stephanie's kind of like their pretty girl in class. So now you're like, oh, well, duh. He's trying to talk to this pretty girl. You're in his way. He's like, bro, get out of here, right? But he doesn't understand. But to you, it's super clear. Now, aside from the fact, even though it's your kid, and even though you don't want him to hurt, there's something about just knowing what happens there that just you're very just flatlined. Like you're just like, hey, let's walk through this, you know, like. But if it has to do with affairs that are not as clear to you, why, right? Somebody is like complaining to you about somebody else, and you yourself don't really know, but have something very negative to say about that person. There's something about that interaction that is can destabilize you because you don't know what's happening either. And I think that when it comes to, especially to the things that really matter to us, it becomes more and more, it exacerbates the emotional impact. If I a good example of this is that in politics is very clear, right? Even if things should be clear, they're never clear because it's always about, you already have like very strong convictions. By the way, the reason that I think in politics is like always so pronounced is because in politics is the one place where we constantly pretend that things are super simple, even though the things are the most complex they can possibly be, because they have to do with people, and people is way more complex than, you know, just systems. So we think, well, what do you mean? How can you not see that this person is just this and this? How many people use the word just when they talk about politics? It's like, it's just this. It's so clear. It's like, dude, do you understand what goes in the cabinet of a president? Like, do you understand the level of decision making happening there? Like, it's not that clear cut as you think it is, right? But yet we constantly pretend that it is, and we just decided to join this tribe that says it this way, and we feel like we're at home when we hear that, even though if we would just understand that it's way beyond what we all think. Notice that in all these like discussions, nobody mentions information that the government probably has that is like, you know, from secret organizations and things like that. Like they know more than they can ever tell you, right? So just that alone should do work in kind of relaxing your machinery with interacting with it. But so what I mean by when I said clarity and vagueness, I think just the ability to see clearly exactly what's going on, because there's catharsis in being in the presence of what I call understanding, the state of just like full clarity of what the situation is. Because I guess the thing there is maybe evolutionary, because you know you can come up with a solution quickly, because if it's as easy for you as seeing just, you know, like a mechanism, and you just see what's broken, you're not worried because you can just come and go, fix it. Like, you know what's the problem. But if you don't know, now you're like, oh, there's a problem and we don't know what to do, and it's concerning. That's what I mean by that.
I got you. It's just I think that when you think clarity, I think the clarity is the result of, and not the reason for. And what I think it's a result of, and describing it rather not indirectly at all, the clarity comes from comfort in, first of all, the ability to shift perspectives, right?
Shift what? Sorry. Shift perspective, you said?
Yeah, from the ability to shift perspectives, put yourself in the other person's shoes, for example.
Yes. And also I see your comments. I see your comments, Thunder. I appreciate your comments and I agree with them. Also, how are you, Laban? Continue, brother.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, that's it. So, chicken or the egg thing, what comes first, the clarity or the perspective? But I think we're talking about the same thing, and just, don't want to get hung up on semantics, but you described it well. And I think when you're able to put yourself in a situation where you're the observer of the situation, I am in a conversation with somebody who has a different viewpoint than me, or as you said with the child example, okay, I am the parent of this child who has been hurt, but the child was in a situation where the clarity comes from the ability to not get emotionally wrapped up immediately. That's the muscle that you're flexing. The muscle that you're flexing is the ability to subdue, and again, let's go back to system 1, system 2. The automatic instinct is system 1, you touched my kid, I beat you. System 2 is, okay, let me listen to the story. What did Tommy do? Oh, okay, I kind of see what's going on. Let me see, okay, now how can I address this with my child for him to understand, so that he knows that I'm here for him, but at the same time, I'm going to tell him he could have handled things differently, so next time he's better equipped to avoid that situation. You know what I mean? So there's a clarity, I think, and again, just semantics. I think the clarity comes from the ability to not jump on the emotional roller coaster train and just allow system 2 to kick in and give it some thought. From your perspective, from the other's perspective, from the observer perspective, that's where I think the clarity comes from, and that's where I think the growth comes from, right?
Yeah. So
again, I think we're saying the same thing.
no, we are, but to me, so this is where, this is where every person that I heard that it was influenced by the beginning of Infinity as I was, the what we say about it is usually the same, which is that overall what it did is that it literally uploaded a new operating system on my brain. And a lot of people say this. And specifically what it did, it made me see that all of these attempts to describe the world in this way, or in these kinds of ways, are actually just special cases of a much more general case. And the second you understand that general case, you don't need to worry yourself with all these special cases. And
What's this book called?
The Beginning of Infinity. I read this book maybe 30 times. So I think it should be a manual for the 21st century, honestly. And yeah, I highly recommend it. David Deutsch, The Beginning of Infinity. And if you listen to audiobooks, the audiobook is also great. So the main idea that really changed my whole perspective of what's possible and what we are is this idea that, well, it's true. So the general thesis in the book is that there's this line called The Beginning of Infinity, and you will always be in the beginning of infinity by definition, because it is infinity. So, but nevertheless, there's a difference between crossing the line of the beginning of infinity and not crossing the line. And we are now officially crossing the line slowly. So we haven't fully crossed, but some of us cross or crossing in some ways and in others. And what he shows every chapter, he goes to different domains: science, art, music, language development, just mathematical ideas, politics, everything. And he shows in every single domain how we're crossing the beginning of infinity. And at the core of it is this ability to have a kind of attitude, the kind of software that allows you to know that there is, if it is physically possible for it to happen, just like in the snake venom, there's also the antidote. Inside of every problem, there's a solution that is hidden in the way the problem is arranged. And we are the kind of things, so we are universal constructors. In other words, we're the kind of thing that can build things versus just local things. We can build universal things that have implication for the universe versus just locally. But we're also universal explainers. This is where we did not used to be universal explainers, and now we're universal explainers. And the universal explaining is what made the difference between us crossing the beginning of infinity, which is what happened with the scientific revolution. We realized that there are answers that are not local, and the second you start hitting that channel of the universal, you join the universal family. In other words, the second you start playing with that channel, you're now in a different category of things in the universe. And you start kind of like any species that gets to a certain level of becoming advanced must at some point hit that line, or they don't get to interact with the rest of what's possible because simply they can't. So you opened the doors of your own prison by becoming, like, understanding how to talk about it, transmute that information, and how to do it also, how to execute it. And what's interesting about that is that then this whole thing about, you don't go back to these data points of, like, the second you start asking the question, what is it versus how is it, that's a universal function, because you get to interact with it directly, and you literally asking the thing, like, you're trying to understand it, not explain it. You explain by looking at a lot of factors, measurements, all the stuff that science does. But according to Deutsch, science is not in the business of all the stuff that people tend to claim, measurement and repetition and all that stuff. It's in the business of understanding. And the second you truly understand something, a lot of the stuff that you would have to do around it to describe it, like constantly point to it from some direction, you're no longer touching the elephant from a limited space. You zoom out and you see the elephant as a whole, and you go, oh, I see. That's why the trunk is there and the thing is there. So, and every single thing that happens basically follows this trend. And what's interesting is that, like, for example, with with the sun, there's like combinations of these things. Like, on the surface of it, it looks like the sun goes around the earth. It takes some clever thinking to say, well, hold on, maybe it's not the case, but then how do you test for that? There's ways to test for that, right? And so, for example, and it actually connects nicely to what you were saying just now, in the chapter that he talks about the evolution of language was really interesting, because he said that in order to have a universal language, you actually have to figure out how to do that. We take it for granted, but originally language arose as just symbolizing specific things, which is kind of like, sounds like along the lines of what she's describing the problem as. You're pointing to specific things. You're saying, this is this drawing. This is this drawing. This owl is this drawing. This,
Right.
But in order for a language to become universal, you have to give the language the ability to construct, no matter what comes into purview of awareness, you should be able to construct it from that language, and you should give the tools to the speaker to do it on the fly. And for example, like modern languages, they are universal. Like English is universal because the letters make sounds, the sounds make the meaning, so you get to play with it as you go. So when you discover new things, it goes with you, it evolves with you, and it becomes universal. But before that, it wasn't like that. Arithmetic is also like that. So until we haven't developed numbers that represent the abstraction of numbers. So before we used to only tally. A tallying system is not universal, because you're always limited by how many you add, how many you subtract, and you just have a representation on a paper that tells you how many, and you can be more and more clever with how you annotate that. But it's not universal, because what the language also makes you think a certain way. So when you're thinking in terms of tallying something, you're thinking like that. You're thinking in terms of adding physical things. When people thought in tallying ways, they couldn't understand what that meant, what 64 times 100 meant, because they don't have that software. That software only comes with kinds of mathematical language with symbolic representation that is universal. And that only comes when you give it the ability to unfold into the infinite space, no matter how far you go, and it never runs out of ability to describe. You can always allow it. So the decimal point system allows you to do that. And there's other ways, of course, for different functions. You can create your own notations, obviously, but that is the definition of a universal, that you can you give it whatever tool it is. If it is to be universal, it must have the kind of property that allows it to evolve with the understanding together. And that's what we are. Does that track? Or
Absolutely, yeah. And the way you explained it just opened up a world of realization to me. So thanks. Yeah, that was nice.
It blew, this book blew my mind. Like I was just, I'm like, there's so many like just mind fucks in this book, and I'm like, this book contains. I've never experienced anything like this in my life. This book contains 3 different moments in the book that I remember clearly.
Okay.
That I thought something strongly, and then I read that and I went, oh, okay, I don't think that anymore. Like this. It was just like, damn. It's amazing what a perfectly articulated argument can do. It's just that wiped it clean from my brain. It's like one example like that, which is like literally, I felt like I woke up from a dream. I was like, what? That's crazy. Like one of these instances I remember was this whole, thing that people do a lot in politics, and it influences world affairs and all that stuff. And people just tend to land on one side or the other of the argument, right? I'll obviously say what it is in a moment, but the whole global warming thing. So immediately you think, oh, so like, what is he saying? Global warming is not real? No. He said something very simple. He said, arguing whether it was man-made or not is completely irrelevant. What we want to be interested in is solving problems. Is it a problem? Great, let's solve it. But arguing, think about how much energy goes into arguing. Was it man-made, not man-made? Is it a problem right now? Okay, how do we solve it? That's it. And I was like, dude, that's so true. It's like, he's like arguing whether all the ills that come with like what we think global warming is because of human pollution. So what? So if it's not man-made, we shouldn't solve it? It's like, what if natural catastrophes of types of hurricanes that happen that are not due to humans, should we not think of how to protect ourselves from it or remedy it? Like, of course we should. What does it got to do with, like, so it has nothing to do with the problem solving part. It has to do with righteousness, virtue signaling. But it was just like, it just completely woke me up from this entire conundrum. Like I was like, it's just like, and I was like, how does nobody notice this? And it's right there on the surface.
Yeah, and I think to have those moments when reading a book, it speaks to you need to preemptively have that capacity to abandon those orphan thoughts, orphan beliefs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I definitely, obviously, you have to have an open mind, but there's another one there that would probably definitely rally a lot of people against it, because the people are very attached to these propositions. But my 2 favorite chapters there are The Dream of Socrates. So if you read it, when you get to it, that you'll see what I mean. And the other one is Why Are Flowers Beautiful? And in that chapter, he basically makes the claim that it's possible to conceive that whatever we experience as beauty is actually a universal function. And it's hard to define because it has something to do with aesthetics, but it's not just that. It has something to do with symmetry, but not just that. There's something in how we perceive beauty. And the interesting part is that probably we can't quite point to it yet because we haven't fully crossed the line of the beginning of infinity as it pertains to the perception of beauty. However, we already are capable of perceiving universal beauty versus local beauty, which has to do with organisms that are genetically predisposed to see something beautiful, to be attracted to it. But it's possible to conceive of certain things that evolve towards what is universal beauty. And what the claim he makes, which is, of course, he's not saying it must be the case. He's saying, here's an interesting thought.
Okay.
What if flowers on Earth are the first thing on Earth to figure out a universal channel of beauty, and they evolved specifically to be beautiful? So because they needed to communicate across species, and you want to utilize something universal to communicate across species. And the reason, so obviously, different bugs find flowers for different reasons beautiful, and they see it in different colors and blah, 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 blah. And some just because of but the beauty part plays a function in the communicate between species, and humans recognize it as beautiful because we're universal explainers. So we can recognize universal beauty. And that's why we find them beautiful, because we recognize the beauty in it. And that's an interesting thought, because he said it's possible to conceive of works of art that are universally beautiful in such a way, if we get to that level of art, he's not saying we got there, but he's saying it is conceivable to think of, if we get there, to levels of art that are beautiful universally, which means that even if a civilization of complete aliens from 1 million light years away, 1 million years more advanced than us, and yet if it is touching on this universal beauty part, just like the flowers did, they would recognize it as beautiful. They would see that it's a beautiful art. And that I found very, there's something very profound about that for me. This connection of seeing the same transcended objects together, and kind of like that journey of to see it clearer and clearer, basically.
Yeah, I can see a truth to that. I can see. It reminds me of ayahuasca.
Okay.
For some reason, DMT in and of itself, when you're in non-breakthrough experiences, can turn a plain old landscape into something that is undeniably beautiful, and I don't use the word lightly, but sensual in the way that it moves in the wind, and it across species, that tree across the field from me can move in ways akin to what somebody would find sexually desirable in a female companion, and in ayahuasca voyages, I feel that same outer experience that you have on DMT also happens inside as well. I feel that the intertwining between the human body and the plant that you're consuming has this beautiful marriage within you, and it can feel like ecstasy as the two come together. So I think that beauty in and of itself isn't limited to what can be perceived with the eyes.
Of course not.
There's something more profound to, I think, the way that beauty affects us than just what's going on in the optical cortex,
Yeah, I do think, though, and this is yet to be determined, obviously, but I do think that there's something unique to the visual field. I think that the visual field, I don't think it's a coincidence that you can communicate the most information through the visual field. I think there's something about perceiving light in that way that I think there's a reason for that. I don't have strong technical reasons for that yet, but my intuition tells me that you can understand visually more at once than in any other way. Now, some people would say you can understand more somatically. So like meaning can be imparted on your body faster than you can like read from information. And I think that's actually probably also true. But what I mean specifically is that I think that you can communicate specifics a lot faster and a lot more at once through the visual field. That's my intuition.
I mean, there's reasons for why it might come across that way for sure. And I'm not saying that I disagree. I'm just exploring maybe if one of the reasons why we can gather more information from the visual field is because, you know, it's the part of our brain that just takes, what is it, 1/3 of all the energy that it consumes, the brain consumes in the optical cortex, right?
I don't know that. I mean, if you say so, I take it. But yeah, I'm not familiar with that enough. But maybe, yeah.
Yeah, somewhere along those lines. I mean, it's a very, very resource-intensive process to process visual information, and in a world where information gathered from a distance was very valuable to us evolutionarily.
Mm-hmm.
Sound obviously is one of them, but there's a limit to how sound can help you avoid a quiet predator. All right, so it makes sense to understand that we evolved to gather more visual information because it allowed us to have a higher survival rating based on the nature of our environment. At the same time, I think to validate your point, it's the sense that allows us most directly to plug into the electromagnetic field. It's only a tiny little sliver,
yeah.
Admittedly.
Well, I think that has something to do with the universal component of light versus the local component of air.
Yeah, absolutely. There's truth to that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that, I mean, there's something that Terence McKenna once voiced, and it just sounded really true to me. But that the visual field seems to be like unique, special in some way. But I think maybe if I have to kind of guess, maybe that would be it. That air is a local medium, and sound would behave differently on a different planet with different density and a different gas. But light wouldn't.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll be affected by refraction or whatever, but it will still get there.
And I do think that there's something like a meaning gathering that can happen in the body that might also be universal, but it has something to do with the inner space of experience that probably is also universal, no matter the shape of the animal. So that might also be why the kind of the truth of existence speaks to you through the body, which is what the Buddha believed. And that, I think that it's also this truth to it, because there is this, as long as you're experiencing something, however it is that your experience came about in the environment that you happen to occupy, it can vibrate through you. The truth can vibrate through you in a way that is universal, because the experience itself comes from a universal source. I think maybe this, but that's a lot more esoteric, obviously. I don't know if that's that tracks.
Yeah, it's with me. You give me a lot of for that today, Dan.
Well, I appreciate it, considering your mental prowess. Don't jump off just yet. I want to finish up with Jessica giving us a little bit of an overview of her theory. And by the way, to your comment, Jessica, your comment to what I said before was the reason we recognize global warming as man-made is so we recognize our own responsibility. We can opt not to. Valid point, but I would claim that, or at least under the picture that David Deutsch paints, our responsibility as universal constructors and explainers on this planet, the only ones on this planet, is actually to just solve problems for everybody, because we can. So it doesn't matter if we created the problem. Our job and responsibility is to just solve problems. That's what we're here for. We are here to protect the biosphere. If a meteor comes right now, we can protect it, even though we didn't cause that problem. And that I would claim that would be a more universal function of what we do. But without further ado, go ahead. Jessica is going to present to us her theory of everything, or at least the beginning of it. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Doing great. Thank you for asking.
I'll do the best I can in as short a time as
sure.
possible.
And by the way,
But,
if we feel like we need more time, tomorrow we also have 2 lives, so we can start today. And if it drags into much longer, I would love to hear the rest of it tomorrow, and then we can also continue even into the members live. But go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll start with what I is the simplest, is starting with 4 pi r square. If you remember, can you tell me what that is? 4
Can
pi
I
r
tell you
square?
what that is?
Yeah, you remember what that one is?
What I'm not I don't know if I understand the nature of the question.
4 pi r square.
It's the area of a sphere.
Oh, you're asking me the
There you go.
definition of it. Okay.
Yep, you know what else it is?
What?
Gravity. 4 pi r square.
Okay.
So really, I know that it sounds like quite a bit of a stretch, but
Wait, hold on. But before you even continue, why would it? First of all, I do have to brush up on my physics 101, so I would just refer to Sean if to kind of like these verifications. But it doesn't sound crazy or far fetched because the Earth is a sphere. So whatever the
Yeah,
gravitational, right? So whatever the
Well,
gravitational,
The Earth itself isn't a sphere, but the gravitational center
Yeah.
of it can be seen as one. So yeah.
correct.
That's
It's
a
more
point.
like an egg shape, exactly. But
still
like it
follows
wouldn't,
the same equation. Yeah.
but it wouldn't be crazy because it exhibits that shape, and therefore the force will be
Yes.
adhering to that shape. Okay, go ahead.
Exactly. That's the whole point.
That-
So basically, when you start with, for instance, a hypersphere,
Mhm.
man, it is chopping out pretty bad. You can't hear me very well, can you?
I can hear you really well, but I'll mute myself and see if that's better. Go ahead.
Okay. So I wasn't sure. It just sounded like it was choppy when I was hearing. But what I was saying, though, about you're right, because it's a sphere, that's the exact point. So as a hypersphere, if you picture a hypersphere in 4D, you kind of can't. You can picture a circle, you can picture a sphere, but what we picture, the shadow of the hypersphere in 3D, is a 3D sphere. So basically, anything that is a sphere is potentially also a hypersphere rotating through space. Although in the fourth dimension, it doesn't actually move or do anything, but its rotation through space, the shadow of that is what we see as the sphere. So because it's the same sphere no matter what, then the same equations start to play out. So you get the same 4 pi r square is going to be the same equation for gravity as you would have for the surface of a, or the area of a sphere. But instead of the dealing with just the sphere, you start to be able to bring that out into electromagnetism as well. So you find the same proportions with magnetism and electricity and bring it down to a geometric root. And that's really what I was working on with the postulate 6, is starting from the root of postulate construction, geometric construction, and bringing that into a full set of electromagnetic and gravitational equations.
So before you continue, wait, before you well, hold on, Jessica.
The quarks.
Okay, sorry, I just want to make sure that we're following the same thing. So,
Yeah.
would it not be the so? First of all, I'm tracking everything you're saying so far. So, first of all, I would say that there's actually so we know people definitely investigated this, that actually gravity would be working very differently in 4D. And the reason that it's most likely is in 3D is because when you go to 4D, it would collapse any possible structure. You wouldn't be able to operate in 4D with gravity. I haven't ran the calculations, but I remember very clearly seeing a paper about this. So at least what I can deduct from that is that you do have mathematical ways to probe into whether or not our spherical function of gravity is adhering to a deeper structure of a hypersphere in 4D or not, just by running these calculations. And that would be interesting to explore. I'm not saying it necessarily debunks anything you're saying. It's just that would be interesting to explore. And the second question I have is, but when you're talking about magnetism, it doesn't follow the spherical thing. Like, it's different because it follows the toroidal structure because of the way that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you grapple with that in your theory? And I'll mute myself now.
That's why the construction is the construction of torus. The postulate 6 is the construction of the torus, by rotating a sphere, actually I start with a circle, through that space, creates a torus.
So by rotating the hypersphere through the space, or the sphere through the space?
The shadow of this hypersphere, which would be a sphere.
Well, it would be the surface of the hypersphere. Shadow would be
Yeah.
different. Yeah, because projection is different than the surface of something. Topologically,
Projection, shadow. It's hard to really calculate that and call it what it is without it coming across either way, because it's still a shadow or a projection either way. The depth is going to be there whether you count it as a shadow or a projection.
no. A shadow.
The nature.
So we
What?
definitely want to get our terms straight. And Sean, feel free to jump in at any point if you feel like we're drifting into things that are incorrect. But as far as I can tell, there is a big difference between a surface of something and a projection of something. So if I rotate some kind of an object, let's say a cube, and I project light from the side, and the shadow that falls, the projection of the shadow that falls on the surface, it would exhibit properties that the surface of the cube would not exhibit. It will be different.
You're describing shadow and projection in 3D, but I'm describing what is not a 3D shadow.
No, it doesn't matter. You can go into
Projection,
infinite.
I'm talking about the projection.
Yeah, like
of the
E8.
4D.
Yeah, like E8 is a projection of a much higher dimensional. It's an eight-dimensional shadow of a much higher dimensional shape. I forget how many dimensions, but you can do this with any number of dimensions. So I guess the only reason
Exactly.
I'm
What
getting
I'm saying is that calling it a shadow or a projection, we can't limit it by the three-dimensional definitions of a shadow or a projection, because those are inaccurate. It's the best term we have.
I know,
Or
but what I'm
it's
saying is that
manifestation, it's emanation into this space.
so my point isn't to get bogged down on this point. I'm just trying to create a construction, some image of what you're saying. And right now I'm confused.
Mhm.
So do you mean that the rotation of, because you said the rotation of the shadow of the hypersphere, do you mean the rotation of the surface of the hypersphere? Because that's what a sphere is. The sphere is part of the surface of the hypersphere, not of the projection of the hypersphere. I'm just making sure that I'm understanding it correctly. So if if you so if right now we have a four-dimensional object that is, which by the way I actually think that this is what we're looking at the laser. I think that it's a rotating four-dimensional object, and every time it rotates into our 3D, the surface of it is what we're seeing when we're projecting the laser on it. And that's why it looks super complex, because it's actually a four-dimensional object, and only its three-dimensional slice is the thing that we can interact with and see. But if you would tell me it's a projection of that four-dimensional object, I would expect it to look differently, because then you're going to have to talk about how we're projecting it on the surface. In topology, there's a way to do that, but I'm trying to imagine the technical way you're viewing this. So I don't want to get bogged down by the terms.
Topology is still a three-dimensional term. That's why, that's why it's going to get you bogged down trying to think of it as a three-dimensional term. Topology is three-dimensional, trying to picture projection and the method like we were talking about. Like you can project light, but light is thin, subtle. We can project things subtly in our realm.
So that would be,
can't really project anything.
No,
because
topology is
we are
not
3D.
topology is not a three-dimensional thing. Topology can talk about infinite dimensions. It's just very complex to talk about it. But topology is a universal thing. So you can talk about higher dimensional topologies for sure.
Yes, I understand that. But if you're trying to portray whether or not a four-dimensional hypersphere projected into three-dimension, whether or not it's going to be like a shadow, a ghost of itself, or whether it's going to be a projection, whether it's going to be filled with matter or light, trying to like pin it down like that as whether it's a shadow or a light.
No, a shadow or a surface. No, just the difference between
both. It's going to be refraction and diffraction.
No, I'm not talking about
one or the other.
I'm not talking about the difference between a light or a shadow. shadow is projected. Projection is just the technical term of projection, where you project higher dimension on a lower dimensional surface. If you project a shadow of a 3-dimensional shape onto a 2-dimensional a surface, you're downgrading what can be observed, but you're not seeing just the interaction of the surfaces. You're also seeing the way that the shape looks in 2D when it's presented from a particular angle on its 3D rotation. But that's not the same as saying its surface. You see what I'm saying? I'm making the distinction between its surface and its projection, not between light or shadow. Just that little is there something that I'm misunderstanding here, Sean, that you can hear that maybe you can reconcile? Maybe I'm misunderstanding what Jessica is saying.
No, I think you're using the correct terminology, Dan. I'm just curious, and I think we're just getting hung up on semantics now, but I understand what you didn't understand about what Queen Sativa is saying.
Okay.
You're right in your corrections, Dan, but I'd like to see if by letting Queen Sativa continue, we can skip over that perhaps wrong term that she used and the underlying concept she's trying to explain.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to I want to make it clear. I'm not trying to correct your terminology, Jessica. I just want to be able to imagine it properly. But yeah, but let's continue, and then maybe I can just complete that in my own head.
Exactly, I realized I didn't finish that thought. So the reason I brought that up is what shape that a hypersphere will show if you injected the shape into our dimension. What shape would that be? It'd be a circle or it'd be a sphere, right? You don't get much out of a sphere, right? You're not going to get much angle out of the surface of that hypersphere projecting, and it's all going to look the same, right? Completely the same. Circles or spheres or lines, but otherwise.
Circles or spheres? Yeah, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. So the breakthrough I had was when viewing a hypersphere in Quaternion space simulator and turning it. If you turn it to, it pops in and out of frame. A 4D sphere comes in and out, it merges and disappears. But at a certain angle, when you turn it onto the I-axis, 90 degrees on the I-axis, and you take a look at it just on the I plane, you're going to get a stereographic projection. And what you end up seeing is basically it forms the vesica piscis, and it also forms what I recognized as the electric field surrounding two conductors. Now, I recognize that graphic from Oliver Heavysight's graphic, which he had drawn. But the thing about it is if you look at that closely, you also recognize that it's a torus. So what I'm saying is through contemplation and observation of the 4-dimensional figure, the hypersphere, there is an additional pattern that is not a circle and is not a sphere. That pattern is the torus. And I had to get to the bottom of that because I was not a believer in the torus. I had no connection to the torus. I didn't get delved into the 3, 6, 9, all Rodin coils and all that. I didn't get into all that. So torus was like, I don't get it. So I had to really delve into it a little further because I knew it was something, though. At the same time, I knew it was something. I knew it was important in regards to how does a hypersphere shift in 3 dimensions anyways? It would have to be turning within itself. If you try to picture the 4D, 3D shift, you know what I'm saying? So that means there is some place inside of a hypersphere where some change can occur, even though 4D is no change, no movement, nothing. So the inner torsion of that is expressed in that one non-circular, non-spherical shape, the torus.
Okay, hold 1 second. Why are you saying that in 4D there's no change?
4D?
You
No
said that in
time.
4D there's no change.
No time. If there's no time, there's no change because there's no morphology.
But time. So okay. So you're using the temporal fourth dimension. I thought you were talking about the spatial fourth dimension. So you're talking about time.
Spatial, temporal, they're kind of both the same.
But they're not. They're not.
What it comes out to, it does come out to be the same. At a certain root, space and time do come from the same evolutionary origin. And that's what I was finding was the origin of magnetism, the origin of electricity, origin of gravity. Were all geometric consequences of this shift as 4D expresses itself, shifts and twists into 3.
So are you
Because
suggesting?
3 is always changing.
So wait. So are you suggesting that the fourth dimension of the hypersphere is time?
Not exactly. Because I can't really put my finger specifically on time or strap it down to the fourth, because we might have to take it one more beyond that. Because one of the things that we leave out with our 3 dimensions without really thinking about it is density. So we got length, width, height, and depth. But we hardly ever think about density. We have 4 dimensions, and if you think about it in a way.
But density is not a dimension. It's a product. Density is just a product of how many things are there. Let's use very general terms in a small region of space. So the denser it is, there's more of these things in the same region of space. I wouldn't call it another dimension. What? Yeah, it's mass. Right. It's well, yeah. You can use them interchangeably. They're not exactly the same.
What I'm saying is that, yeah.
But my yeah. Go ahead, John.
No, it's okay.
So yeah. So the thing I'm having a hard time with is that. So for me, and this might be my, or most likely, not probably. Let's just start with I'm the problem for sure. The way my brain works is that I'm having a really hard time to do what Sean suggested. I'm doing my best, but the second there's more than one point where I feel it's not exactly that, I can't proceed because now we're starting to create a house of cards. So the 3 points that I'm now having an issue with is I don't know if you're talking about a surface or a projection. And that, you're right, that might be a little bit less consequential because we can look at it at the end. But the other thing that
answer that is Klein bottle. Go on.
Okay, but the other thing that I'm encountering now is that I'm asking you: are you talking about a temporal dimension or a spatial dimension? You're saying it doesn't really matter; they're the same. I don't know that to be true because they're functionally different, and they like the bulk is postulated to have a fourth dimension. But it is not a temporal dimension. And also, sorry, yes, it's not a temporal dimension, but also forget about the fact that it's
the Klein-Kaluzda dimension.
That's just a 4-dimensional object in which you can describe the shape of a Klein bottle, in which it doesn't really cross with itself like it does in 3D. But the thing that I need some more clarification on before we continue is. And by the way, you can absolutely say, you know what, at this point of my theory, I'm not sure about that part, and then I'll be happy with it. But then I need to hear it from you that you're not sure, because it sounds like you're sure about it, but you're telling me, I don't know, maybe we need to add one more. Now it becomes flimsy, like what are we describing? That's
Oh no.
Okay.
Yeah, I get what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about when I reference just a 4-dimensional hypersphere, I'm trying to give you some context on how to picture it, but I'm not trying to count and number the dimensions and say, oh, crap, yeah, if I'm talking about 4-dimensional hypersphere, we got to put time in 5th now because,
Got it. Okay, that helps a lot. Okay.
Trying to use
Got it. Okay.
You can recognize a 4-dimensional hypersphere and recognize what we're talking about without having to pin which dimension time.
So let me recapitulate what I understand so far. Mm-hmm. You're relying on the idea that there's a higher dimensional sphere, and its rotation is what we observe as both gravity and magnetism depending on the angle of observation. Like, for example, why do we see? Because if I'm hearing you correctly, and correct me immediately if I didn't understand you correctly, that gravity that exhibits the spherical function and magnetism that exhibits the toroidal function, they're essentially a function of the same thing, but dependent on what? Why do we see different from a third dimension?
Because of the twist, because of the twist in the middle. Because when you really get into it a little deeper, you got to get into spin. So the torus itself, in creating it, you get
You said tight.
rotation, spin, by generating the torus. Excuse me. Through the action of generating the torus, that determines two other things, which is axis and polarity. Because through the motion of spin, you've created axis. And that according to that axis and that spin, pardon me, I just lost my train of thought there.
No worry, no, take your time.
Into that spin is in the middle. You have to have a twist in order for the windings to go all the way around the torus. So you end up with, it takes two windings to go around a heliacal winding before it comes all the way back to base. So that's why you end up with two times around, one up the middle, one twist in the middle, two wraps around the outside. So you get your quantum numbers start to come from the harmonic windings.
You're talking about spinners?
Well, no, I'm not talking about spinners. I'm talking about the spin of the torus. But yes, that is spinners. I'm not going to refer to things outside of the model directly. I'm going to try not to, because I'm not referencing spinners trying to drag them into my model. I'm telling you where spin is.
Got it. Okay. Okay.
And because when you start to picture the construction, it starts to make more sense, because you start to see those lines draw out, the electric and magnetic and orthogonal.
I think I see some of it.
And they quite present themselves.
Yeah, I think I see some of it.
Do you have any visuals to accompany what you're talking about here?
Not yet, no, because as I was working through it, I didn't have it generate any graphics, because I was visualizing, imagining, because it's very difficult. You can't.
Can you show us
compass and ruler these constructions?
If tomorrow?
I think where we're having trouble following is because you're using language to help guide us down the same visual journey that you went through. But the language that you're using, and I'm not saying this in any derogatory way, isn't exactly on point. So it would be definitely helpful to have the visual so that you wouldn't have to try and employ the language that you're using to get us to that point. Because I think what you're trying to do is lead us down a road so you can get to a conclusion, but the road that you're leading us down, you're not turning on the right lights, if I can say it that way. So we're having trouble following you down to that conclusion because of the way that you're constructing the path.
I have a possible solution. I have a possible. Oh, sorry. There's a delay probably. I have a possible solution. If tomorrow we either the regular live or the members live, or maybe even both, if we look at that, because you remember you probably utilized that 3 blue 1 brown quaternions thing, right? So can you show us in that simulation what part made you understand the thing you mentioned to us?
Yes.
Okay.
Just rotate I by 1.
I know, but right now it's like Sean over here is Power of Mensa, and I'm pretty sure that even he has a hard time imagining what you're saying, because it's like we would have to simulate it in our minds, and I don't remember what I does in real time,
No, yeah, I can't picture it in my mind to tell you. I just remembered that I can tell you once you have the simulator in front of you, dial in. I do make sure you got the set up so that it's a hypersphere projection, and then just rotate it one to the eye.
Well, yeah. So let okay. So that will be.
But it doesn't look like a torus. What I recognized.
No, we'll be able to, like, even if it doesn't look like a torus, so I can at least understand what was your jumping point that led you to that conclusion. Because if the conclusion is correct, other minds would be able to follow you there if if they can cognize it. Like I understand what you're saying, that it won't translate to the exact thing you're pointing to, but there was something about that instance with the quaternions in the visualization that made you reach a conclusion. And if I see that moment, it might help quite a bit in understanding what you're being led to. So I can flesh out to you my confusion currently, which might just be a product of language. But for example, if you're saying, if you're telling me that the magnetic toroid and the gravitational sphere in the universe are the result of a rotation of a higher dimensional object, then I want to understand what is it about the boundary through which we're looking from 3D that makes them appear different. And I didn't hear an answer to this. So, for example, you're saying it's because of the rotation. Okay, but what is it about the rotation? So,
It makes them appear different.
Yeah.
Electric and magnetic.
Are you not saying they're one and the same, just looks from a different angle?
Oh, they're one and the same. It's just it's not about Oh, that's a little trickier. It's just that the electric arises from that flux.
You're talking about the relationship between electricity and magnetism?
Torsion.
You're talking about the relationship between magnetism and electricity?
Pardon?
Electricity and magnetism, that relationship is what you're
the difference.
Okay, hold on.
No, we already know that magnetism arises from electricity and vice versa. But what I'm saying is that okay, so those lines create lines of flux because they're following the rotation of that hypersphere as it moves. So those lines are going to end up creating do not cross zones. So according to the right-hand rule, you cannot cross those lines because they're going to push each other away. Those lines won't cross each other. So instead, they go the other way. So that's how we end up with the, orthogonal magnetic field rather than the electric. But what I'm saying is that when you start to draw it out on the torus, when you draw out the torus and then you put that into rotation, then you start to see those lines move, and then it starts to draw out the rest of the magnetic field from the electric field. And the reason I was bringing that up is, so one hypersphere, you could say that any sphere then is potentially that same one hypersphere. So if all spheres are potentially that one hypersphere, then they would all follow the same exact basic pattern. And that basic pattern would be the origin of the electric and magnetic fields at that point where polarity is created. The not stereoscopic, what's the other word for it? The projection where you're seeing two ends of the sphere at the same time.
Well, I mean,
like I said, I'm a little shroomy right
now. No worries, no worries at all. I'm really trying to follow. So let's focus for a second on the where rubber touches the road, right? Let's say we follow you tomorrow. We should definitely do that. It's interesting. So let's follow tomorrow your ideation with the quaternions, and then we'll take it from there. But then after that, I can tell you already, and if you can maybe kind of like think about how you can lead us through that. First of all, do you have any ideas of how to test this? Like, why would this hold more water than?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do? Okay.
It's It's a self-proofing toe. It isn't-
Nothing is self-proofing.
that's
I'll tell you why.
thing. Yeah, you're right. How can I test it? And I'm like, well, how do you test Maxwell's equations?
Well, you can.
Each time I try to figure out
No,
how you test
you
it, I'm
you
like,
can you can
"Really,
absolutely
you can
test
build this and test this all over again.
Maxwell
And I'm like, "Wait,
equations.
you can't test all these because we already know that they've been proven.
Without Maxwell's equations, you wouldn't be able to build any complex electronic devices. So, that would be the test, right? Okay, there's no way that you can rely only on the ideas, even if they're super coherent on the mathematical frameworks, because that's the criticism of even string theory, right? That the biggest the
Postulate. Yeah, because you have to make a basic assumption.
well the basic assumption. So look,
has to be made. That's why it's still a postulate.
string theory works in anti-de Sitter
Is that
space,
it?
and we live in a de Sitter space. That's a pretty big problem, right? But then they say no, there's like deeper well, no, I'm just giving you an example. But notice that even kind of like what considered by many the smartest people on the planet, even to them, it seems that there's a possibility to kind of get lost in these like deep theoretical frameworks. The ultimately, or at least that's my position. I might be wrong about that, but my position is kind of like with Feynman. If it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. But then we have to check in with reality once in a while. The way I view it is we're inside of some kind of a vehicle that is fully enclosed. You can't see anything outside, and you're just riding. And then you're riding on some terrain, and you feel a lot of bumps. And from the inside of the vehicles, there's no windows, there's no nothing. And our job is basically we're kind of thinking about like, what does this bump mean? What does this bump mean? What do they mean together? Wait, is this a lot of hills or what? And we're trying to guess all these things about this. And we build all these theories. But eventually, without a doubt,
I incorporate Hilbert space and ADS.
I know, but that's not a test. So like you would have to eventually open a hatch of some sort and look outside and see if there's anything.
ADS.
The what?
I'm not trying to test anti-de Sitter. I'm just saying this incorporates anti-de Sitter and Hilbert space. It doesn't have to prove either of them. I'm saying that this actually helps prove those for them, for the Hilbert space and the string theory people and the ADS anti-de Sitter. It gives them all something, you know.
Okay.
Whether you want to be a string theorist or not, you know.
No, I was using them as an example, but okay. So let's do this. Let's do the thing tomorrow where we're gonna look at the Quaternions simulator, and we'll take it from there. If we can follow it from there, great. Because the visual here must be in place.
Oh, I know. Visuals are the best way to be able to understand it. You're right.
It's much more intuitive for us. Okay, guys, I have to jump off. Thank you so much for joining, Jessica. I really appreciate it, and Sean. But it's getting late, and I gotta go. First of all, I gotta quiet my very loud voice in the house.
Thank you so much.
And Thunder.
It was very enlightening. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you so much, brother. Thunder, I saw that you're trying to join. Hold on, I'll just tell you this directly because I saw that I didn't see, and then I saw your comments. I basically agree with a lot of what you said in these little moments. Would you, first of all, come join our Discord if you're not already a member? You can find the link in the link tree. And then if you can come tomorrow, it will be great to have your thoughts as well. Go ahead. I'll give you a couple of minutes of saying what you wanted to say.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't realize you were gonna be getting off. I just felt like. Well, first of all, do you study physics, or is this like kind of a hobby?
I studied physics a long time ago. I'm not a physicist. No, I know enough to hold a conversation with a physicist, but I cannot construct theoretical frameworks and do the more advanced mathematics. No, but I have enough of an intuition in the space because I've been kind of with it my whole life, but not as a physicist. Why? Are you a physicist? Okay, cool, amazing.
Track to.
Cool.
But yeah, so I I was just gonna kind of come up and just like, you know, be here to maybe chat here and there and throw in, you know, 2 cents here and there.
Please.
But yeah, because like it just seems so like, just at first it was just like so much, just kind of stuff, kind of just thrown at you, right? But
Mhm.
there's no like coherent like, result of that stuff, like what's going on, right? With this hypersphere and a toroid and like all these different things, and obviously then it inevitably led down to like gravity being a result of electromagnetism. So I was like, okay, this is.
So I'll tell you where I'm coming. I'll tell you why I'm coming towards these things. There's you're right. It's kind of difficult to know where it's just when people come up with all these ideas, and now it's becoming more and more prominent because of AI derangement. So like people do believe that they come up with like these brilliant ideas when in reality there's nothing there. That happens quite a bit. But particularly with Jessica, she's been part of the community for a long time, and I've interacted with her enough to know that what is going on is that she's actually, her ability to understand some of the technical stuff, just when we go back and forth with some of the simpler things, she tracks, she understands what's happening pretty well. So I even sometimes, and it's a long shot always, but I'm not willing to reject these ideas out of hand, because sometimes it has to do with a very strong intuition that somebody has, and they might actually be onto something. It's just their ability to express it might not be on par with how a physicist would like it to be formulated, but it's not always nothing. And this is why I'm really trying to understand it, because but what she's really trying to say is that and she'll correct me tomorrow or even now if I'm completely misstating it, but she's essentially trying to say, look, what I believe is happening is there's this higher dimensional object of a particular kind that has a rotation. That rotation translates to these things that we observe as separate, which, by the way, is a pretty common idea. That's not crazy. It's just, what is that exact object? What is the exact rotation? How we define it? That's what's missing for sure. But we can, and a lot of it relies on very strong intuitions she has, but she's not a physicist. So I am trying to play kind of like the middleman of like seeing if there's even anything remotely there, but I am connected to physicists. So if there's something that is kind of interesting and others can partake and actually build on top of that, like maybe it's like a tiny insight that they didn't think about, and all of a sudden we'll create the thing. Again, long shot, but it's possible. And considering the fact that my ideas came from a very broadly casted ontological blanket, and it was around technical things I do understand to some degree. So when I just started thinking about the laser originally, I had no idea it's going to be a laser, by the way. I just started thinking about first principles, and my idea was, well, how do we prove or disprove that the psychedelic space is real? That was the central question. Is there any way
Space is real?
that the psychedelic space, what we see in hyperspace and like the DMT and things like this, my question was, is there a way to say conclusively whether it's real, like real, like as in existing even when you're not looking, right? Or is it more likely mind-made? And my central question was, are there any tools we can ever utilize to be able to discern that? And the answer might have been no. I don't know, but like that was the question, because my experiences were so real. So the reason I'm telling you all this is right now is because my journey started from thinking about it in that way. And yes, I had some technical understanding. So I started thinking about what can I say with absolute certainty. And one of the things I knew I can say with absolute certainty was, well, sometimes we see the psychedelic space, sometimes we don't. However it happens, that means light is involved because I can see it, right? So now light is involved for sure somehow. Even if the brain is doing 90% of the lifting, I don't care. Light is involved. Then I thought, okay, well, if it is real, right? But when I would open my eyes, I would see a lot more stable things, which is it's a little rarer. But I saw things that I like, almost like augmented reality. And you could say, well, maybe your brain is projecting it out there. That's fine, but then you still have to talk about how is the brain borrowing these photons and doing something with, like, all of these things were on the table. But let me just brush through this real quick, just to give you like why I'm more open to these ideas than most would sometimes. And then the other assumption was, well, if it's real, then it would have a geometry. Again, if it's real, it might not be real, but if it's real, it has rules by which it's operating. It has a geometry, even if it's higher dimensional, doesn't matter. It has a geometry. It has a topology, and it has a boundary, because sometimes we see it, sometimes we don't, which means that we enter the space somehow in some form. I don't know how, but like it happens. And then the question was, is there a point in that boundary that we all cross the same? Is there a place from which, if we all look, we're going to see the same thing versus all the different things that people see? That was my guiding principle. That was it. And then one happy day, years after this moment where I kind of started thinking about this, I was walking down the street and I saw a stoplight, and the stoplight was, when it was changing colors, I all of a sudden noticed that the way that the light diffuse in the margins, when, especially when you blink at night, looks different for the different colors. Now apply this to this situation. Like, look how wild, like how flimsy of a methodology this is that I was utilizing, right? But basically, because I understood that maybe it has something to do with just, maybe they use a different glass on each one of them. Maybe it has nothing to do with the color. Or maybe it's the way it's rotated, so it creates enough of a difference in the way that I'm perceiving it. I knew that those are possibilities, but there was something in it. There was just a very strong intuition. It was almost like somebody grabbed me when I thought that and said, yes, look there. And I was like, whoa. It was very strong. And then I started experiencing this like weird, like, signs that appeared like in my regular life, like just like things that are way too specific that like would point me to like a physics paper, the things like this. And it sounds like a rambling of a madman or a schizophrenic. But the only difference, when you really think about it, the only difference between how you do things in science and this kind of, if you can even call it methodology, is how narrow the point of investigation that you're probing. So in science, it has to be very precise, and you only want to be changing one variable, controlling for one variable, one at a time, to make sure that that's the thing that changes and nothing else, right? But in this case, I kind of casted this enormous blanket of ideas, and then I started thinking about how quantum computers work, because we do know they work to some degree, the fact that they utilize decoherence, right? So there is this, so the idea was, which is super crazy out there idea, that there is some possibility communicating in, if this, whatever psychedelic space it is, if it's some kind of a parallel world or something. Well, light seems to be pretty universal. And I thought, what if there is a way to communicate between the worlds? Can there be one bit that can be transferred between the universes in that instance of when light hits things, so the diffraction, right? And I was thinking about actually David Deutsch's work and how he talks about many worlds interpretation and quantum computers. And again, this is somebody who wrote the Deutsch equation, so he knows a thing or two about what works with, thanks to which quantum computers are possible. So all of this was kind of writing in my head. It was like, okay, this is someone who knows what he's talking about. He says this. Is there something there that might be utilized? That was it. That was kind of like the general idea. What, there's something with light diffraction. I don't know. And then it took me years and years of like thinking about it and adding things, subtracting things. And eventually I just kind of landed on this idea of like, lasers? It's just like, it seems like so simple, right? But like, it should have been obvious, but hey, 2020 in retrospect, right? So, and I tried it, and boom, this crazy code that everybody now sees when they do it, right? The fact that I know that my I'm using methodology in scare quotes here, yeah, because every scientist would laugh at me if I said that's a methodology. But my, if you want to call it methodology, is so messy and just like Charlie Day in the basement connecting dots, like so crazy, right? But it worked to some degree, and I know that I would not have reached this conclusion in any other way. So I'm a little more forgiving when people just find the language. You know what I mean? Because sometimes they might have a very similar strong intuition that might actually hold water, and all we got to do is clean the diamond, and then there's a thing there. Maybe not, but it doesn't cost us anything to investigate it, and this is why. But I'm with you, by the way. Like, one of the people here on the channel would know that one of my the people who trigger me is Terrence Howard, and he triggers me exactly because of what you just described, because it's just a word salad and just like he has no idea what he's talking about. But there's like other things involved there. Like, he's very ego driven. He just like shits on everybody and thinks he's a genius. Like, those are qualities that's why, but with Jessica, in Jessica's case, I've interacted with her for I think over almost a year now, right, Jessica? And like, I understand enough about how she thinks that I'm not so quick to dismiss what she's saying. That's where I'm coming from at this whole thing.
Yeah, it's not like I'm saying you can't get anything or anything like that. I'm just, So what did you do with the laser? Like, did you test your hypothesis and then come to a conclusion?
Well, it was. Maybe you don't know anything about my channel. So, like, I basically discovered that if you project a diffracted laser on the surface and you smoke DMT, you will see straight up code running in the surface, and it doesn't look like a hallucination. Like, it just looks straight up like a regular object, like some kind of a hyper object there. And we now at this point, because it's kind of like this like little subcultural thing all over the world, and people are testing it everywhere. So we haven't done the proper double blind in a lab and everything yet, but I am involved with scientists now, and we have thousands of replications all over the world. Yes, it is. It doesn't count for like a proper study, but I have scientists who looked at it and said, "Bro, what in the actual fuck?" Like it's crazy what you're saying. The what?
Like, scientists. Yeah.
I'm saying. Oh, what do you mean? What scientists? We have a couple of physicists. We have engineers. Different kinds of scientists. We have 2 physicists on board. We have an engineer. We have a cryptographer, a brain scan expert. So I have an official like company that does like the research. This is more like what I'm doing here is more like the public facing thing. So we're just kind of talking about it, but and about other things. But yeah, like and my claim, and time will tell, right, is that this is in fact. Well, it's one of the things, but it definitely will be one of the things that will change the face of human understanding forever. We have a way to now at least establish to some degree that there's some part of the signal that comes from whatever space that is that can be shared by different individuals basically 100% of the time, just given that they see it easily. And you can, I had 15 people in a room looking at it, pointing at it, talking about it, exchanging ideas. And if you know nothing about my channel, then I guess I sprung a lot on you right now. But if you go to Dango Thoughts, to my YouTube channel, DANGO Thoughts, and there I have a lot more of like the longer format content. But you can also see here on TikTok, if you scroll down and you see the viral videos, those are obviously made for TikTok, and they're made to grab your attention, so they're a little less informative. But if you look on YouTube, there's a lot more depth to what I'm saying. And we're working on a movie right now about like the phenomena and everything that's going on. If you search for The Discovery, the trailer, that's the kind of the trailer for the movie. Now we have a new one. So anyways, I kind of uploaded a lot. I threw a lot at you all at once. I didn't know that you're not familiar with my work, so now you kind of know a little bit about it. And yeah, we have so Sean is I don't know if you caught that, but he's part of Mensa, the organization for higher IQ people, and he was supposed to maybe present it in the work that we're doing in where in Canada, Sean? Remind me again.
In Montreal.
Montreal. And he have you seen the code, by the way, Sean?
Not using your protocol, no, but my vape is on the way. So in 36 hours, that'll change.
There you go. But this is testable. Anybody can do it at home, and it's very simple. And the reason that I mentioned the trailer wasn't just a shameless promotion. is because in the trailer, what you can see is people's reactions. And I'll give you, so you'll see it for yourself, but there's something about people's reactions when they fully see it that is unfakeable. It's in awe of like a true awe. You don't see that a lot. People like taken aback. The mask drops. And I had Chase Hughes, who's like this, body language expert and interrogation expert. And when he saw the trailer, he reached out to me and he said, "Hey, man, you don't know me. This is who I am. My job is to smell bullshit from 10,000 miles away." He said, "I watched your trailer 50 times. I could not find one instance of somebody's faking a reaction. I need to know what they're looking at." So that the people's faces is a big data point. And including, I mean, obviously you have some people that are just kind of like, just stoners who do this and blah, blah, blah. But you also have like just straight up people who like study physics or they're neuroscientists. And, when they see it, they have the same reaction. They do not expect to see something like that, even if they have a lot of experience with psychedelics. So that's a very, very quick summation of everything that I'm doing, and also what this channel is kind of about.
Gotcha. Yeah. Wasn't aware.
The what? Okay, there you go. Where do you study physics? Yeah, where in America and where?
Well, I'm in America. Yeah.
Cool. Do you?
That's
Yeah, you don't have to. Yeah, no, just out of curiosity. There's no like secondary reason. I'm just interesting. And what do you want? What kind of physicist do you want to be? Do you know?
I'm gonna be studying general relativity and quantum mechanics. So
Amazing. So theoretical mostly.
that's like my so.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about that. I'm not one, but it's the thing that gets my juices going the most. I love that stuff. My grandfather used to be was a physicist before he passed away. Yeah, so awesome. So hopefully you will be coming back to the channel, and feel free to come join the Discord group. You can find it in the link tree right here in the description. Where you heard people talking just now, that's on our Discord stage. So my main channel is on YouTube. Yeah, so it's just it's the easiest because it's the best volume, and we also like share ideas there and all stuff like that. So cool.
Science communities on Discord. So.
Amazing. So our Discord is called Core, COR. Some people told me that the links for some people they work no problem, and some people told me that they have some issues with the invite link that is posted on the link tree and on YouTube. If you do, and you might not be, I don't know, but if you are interested, you can always email me directly to dangoprox@gmail.com. So it's DANGOPROX@gmail.com, and just remind me who you were, and we talk. Say you're Thunder from TikTok, and if you have an issue with the link, I'll send you like a new link so you can join for sure. And tomorrow we're going to be doing a slightly, hopefully more of a like a visual. Because I know what she's talking about. There's a 3 Blue 1 Brown. Probably you're familiar. The mathematics channel. He did a great. Yeah, he built a really cool visualization tool for quaternions, and you can play with the variables and you can see what happens to the projection in 3D, which is really cool. So I think that's what we're going to be utilizing tomorrow to see if there's anything there. And but we're pretty like. There's no anybody who's been a viewer of mine for a long time. They're here because we know there's no hard feelings. Like with Jessica would be totally fine with me telling her, "Hey, I don't think there's anything there," or because I can't see it. But by the way, that means there's nothing there. She might be onto something, and I just don't understand. That's also possible.
Some hard pushback for me. So.
Good. That's what we love.
Resort to being like
you're not gonna get into your mama jokes. Pushback pushback is what I live on, brother. So if you come on, it's more than welcome. Awesome. Amazing. So hopefully you'll join us. And if not, thank you so much for coming in and spending some time today.
The chat and letting me know. So
Awesome. All right, everybody. So with that, I'll have to adjourn. Oh my God, I completely forgot YouTube exists even.
Bye, everyone.
Good night, everybody. If you guys want to follow me and follow Thunder, just Thunder on TikTok. Yeah, absolutely. TikTok, Thunder, just the word Thunder. Super. I always appreciate people who study physics, especially theoretical physics. We need more of that. So thank you for your service. Yeah, so if you guys want to follow me across platforms, it's Danny Goller on TikTok and Instagram. It's Goller Danny on X. Just flip them. It's LaserX83 on Twitch and Dango Thoughts on YouTube. DANGO Thoughts on YouTube. You can also check out my new show on Spotify, 0 to 1 with Danny Goller. Full name 0 to 1 with Danny Goller, from Earthbound Minds to Cosmic Citizens, which we dive much more into kind of like this extravagant topics of what is the future of humanity and what it might look like and all that good stuff. So make sure you check out that. If you want to check out the merch on YouTube, it helps the channel tremendously. So I'd appreciate that if you guys grab an item or two. We have two lines, the Code of Reality line and the Human First line. The Human First is a mini campaign that we're trying to promote human interaction before anything else, which means before your political affiliation, before your ideas about the world. Let's treat each other as humans first before we do all of that. And I think that design is really cool. And if you guys are rocking these shirts, you guys are promoting that idea. Check out, like I said, we're in post-production now. If you want to donate to the film, feel free to do so. Receive with gratitude. The trailer of the movie, it's called The Discovery. In fact, if you're seeing the stream now on YouTube, it's the second link in the description of this live. If not, just search for The Discovery on Dango Thoughts on YouTube. In the description, you'll find the GoFundMe page. Any donation helps because making a movie is a lot of effort. And if you're a baller and you can donate a more substantial amount, you can donate over $1,000. It's a lot, but if you can, you'll be added to the list of people that will see the movie for the first time ever in history altogether. And I can guarantee you the movie is going to be bomb. Aaron Venden, the director, is just a master of his craft. And what he did already in this short time is just like unbelievable. You guys are definitely going to enjoy it. If not, don't worry. Of course, we'll make sure that everybody sees the film. Working on distribution now. What else? Come join our Discord group, of course. You can find the links to it in the main YouTube channel, Dango Thoughts, and also in the link tree in the description on TikTok. And come join the membership program on YouTube, which gives you access to our weekly lives every Sunday. Aside from the daily lives, those are for members only. And we dive much, much deeper into topics, watch all kinds of things, discuss things much deeper. And if you join from the second tier and up for the membership program, make sure you email me to the email listed there, and I will send you an invite for our monthly Zoom calls. Those are a lot of fun because they're pretty intimate. There's not a lot of people, and it's a pretty private conversation. It's a lot of fun together. What else? Come check out our website, codeofreality.com. Codeofreality.com. A new website is coming soon. I promise. I know I've been saying it for a while, but there you can find all the details about the lasers, the protocol, and everything else. Am I forgetting something? I think I covered everything. Appreciate you guys. Guru, thank you so much, my brother. Thank you so much for our incredible moderator, Guru, and also Chris, who's not with us here today, both on Discord and on YouTube. I appreciate you guys. And thank you so much for our incredible audience members. I appreciate you too, brother. Yeah, email me. I'll send you a link, or just if you can join just from here, it would be great to have your input, pushback. It will be absolutely welcome. Thank you so much for all the audience members who are joining, old and new. Without you, this channel would be nothing, and it's a lot of fun that we're building this community together and exchanging these wonderful and out there ideas. All right, everybody. Have a good night. See you tomorrow. Peace and love. Ciao.